Motion carries unanimously. On to presentations. We have a couple of presentations. The first one is on the Camp Avenue pavement project update by our town engineer, Chris Video, and Rob Bellman, our highway superintendent, sorry. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you. You're welcome, Rob. For the record, Rob Hillman, Superintendent of Highways, Chris Video, Town Engineer. So you want to start this or am I going to start this? Okay. I do have one thing I want to start before we go into the formal presentation. One of the property residents emailed me on Friday and pointed out that the no parking restriction is on the south side of the road, not the north side of the road.
Okay.
So that was there on my part. I want to correct that before we get going on this. He had some other comments to make too, but there's more or less not anything we haven't discussed when we had the June meeting. So it's a reiteration of those items there. So we're here tonight to discuss this Camp Avenue project. And we have a little PowerPoint presentation for everybody. Where's the mouse? There we go. So we plan to go through a recap of the project, a discussion on the pros and cons of the options. We'll explain the options, some preliminary cost estimates, staff recommendations, and questions. So this is all stuff we talked about in June. Camp Avenue was originally constructed in 1929 and 1937. We scheduled it for mill and pavement in 2021. Town records have the road last being paved during reconstruction in 1984. And we're all familiar with what happened regarding the discussion on widening it. So I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on that. We currently have funding to do the mill and overlay at its current width. Cost would be approximately $150,000 to $160,000 for that. So project options. Mill and overlay with no changes to the existing geometry. That is the option that Mr. Hillman and I prefer. Pros are it's funded. Cons, maintains no parking restrictions on the south side. Addition to the mill and overlay, we can incorporate traffic calming islands. We have some slides that show what this looks like. We'll get to that in a moment. Pros, that will reduce traffic on the road. The cons, additional funding required and the impact on the residents will impact residents more than it will non-residents. So in other words, the people who live there will deal with these islands more than people who would otherwise be traveling through the area. Addition to the mill and overlay, we can incorporate road edge parking stalls. This is a traffic calming technique that is in wide circulation in places where they utilize these techniques. It would be, instead of having a wider road from one end to the other, there would be areas where we would place 2 or 3 parking stalls off to the side that we're going to be, or it could be alternate. I mean, we have options regarding this if we choose to go this route. Doesn't cost as much as building a whole 2 or 4 feet additional width, but it does provide a little additional space. And we would selectively use them where it doesn't impact a utility pole because they're a big cost driver on the widening. And we would use them where they wouldn't ideally impact some of the landscaping, retaining walls and other features that are out there. And then one of the cons to it that I didn't put on the slide is it does make it difficult for snow removal. Not that we've had a lot of snow the last 2 years.
I gotta wait. Knock on wood.
Just had to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Let's see, where are we? Next slide. So the widened to 26 feet, pros, it allows parking on both sides, and the cons could increase travel speed, requires more funding, additional 550,000 if mill and overlay, 986,000 if reconstructed. Widened to 28 feet, pros, allows parking on both sides, cons could increase the travel speed, and the costs go up from there. Add a bicycle lane, pros, additional bicycle safety moves towards the complete street concept. An example of this would be what we did on Robbins and Maple Hill. Right, that's a complete street design. And the cons requires a wider road, minimum 28 feet, maintains no parking on the street because you have to have bike lane on both sides. And add sidewalks on one side. Pros, additional pedestrian safety, moves towards complete street concept, as does the bike lane. Cons requires 9 feet beyond the curb for a snow shelf and a sidewalk. And additional funding of approximately $230,000 for sidewalk. Okay, this is the same slide we had in June showing the overall street. Like in June, it's not that legible here on the screen either. This is a traffic island concept that is utilized in Seattle. This is where we got this idea from. They do a lot of traffic calming in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of pedestrians, lifestyle is a little bit different, so they do these things. This island would mean you can only take a right turn at the Lloyd intersection. No matter what direction you're coming from, you're not going through. You would have to go right. It's very successful at keeping traffic to a minimum speed. It is also very irritating, in my opinion, for the people who live there. And that's just my opinion about the irritating part. This pair of island concepts we got from West Hartford. West Hartford is actually building these. So this isn't as though it's out on the West Coast kind of an idea. What they do to travel for some streets that had a lot of through travel is they manage the travel through the area by creating islands at the major intersections that only allow you to travel in one direction, or to only say come in and then exit through a side street like Lloyd, or to go out. So this is something they're using over there. They think it's successful. We entertain it as an option. So you can come in from Maple and go out on Willard, but you wouldn't be able to go both directions. And the sister to that plan is you can only go out, so you have to come in through Lloyd. And here's a couple of the options showing some of the adjacent parking. These are in either 6-foot options or 8-foot options. So the 6-foot option wouldn't get a vehicle completely off the road. It would overlap a little bit. And the 8-foot option would be from gutter edge going in, and it would get a vehicle completely off the travel lane. And we just show them places where they don't impact utility poles. We did do the whole street as an idea to see how that would work, but I didn't put all those slides together for tonight. And then we have the cost estimates from GM2, our consultant from 2 years ago, that show the costs of the project if we were to do those 6 options for that. And I think everybody has seen these, so I won't spend a lot of time on that, which brings us to questions and comments.
Questions from counselors? Counselor Jacob.
I just back on your cost estimates, can you just explain, you said, a certain amount of extra money, and then for full reconstruction, what was the full?
You want me to go through them?
No, I didn't know what the full reconstruction referred to.
Let's see.
Like, for example, widen to 26 feet, 550,000 if mill and overlay, 986 if fully reconstructed. What does the fully reconstructed mean?
Where did we have that?
I don't know what that referred to.
Oh, all right. Which option? The full
Well, all of
depth.
them just say, a certain amount of money if mill and overlaid, and then an additional amount if fully reconstructed. I don't know what the fully reconstructed means.
Fully reconstructed means, well, there's two options for full reconstruction. One is what we call reclamation, where we determine that the subbase of the road is adequate, and we would bring in a machine called a mill that would pulverize the existing pavement, and that adds to the subbase, and then you pave over that. And that is less costly than a full depth reconstruction, which is to remove 18 inches from the current surface down, place an entirely new subbase, and then do pavement over the top of that. And that's something we would do if the road was extremely deteriorated, which Camp Avenue is not yet. It is beginning to show the signs that we really do need to mill an overlay or something sooner than later, or we will get into a reclamation or a full depth reconstruction, whether we like it or not.
Okay, I guess I'm being dense, I'm sorry. So you're saying that it would have to be fully reconstructed, or are you just saying?
No, that was one of the options provided by the contractor who did the evaluation of it 2 years ago,
Longer than that, actually.
3 years ago.
Okay, so each option has two possibilities, depending on if we go with just the mill and overlay or the full.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But I think it's important to stress, it's in addition to the
160.
150,000, so 150,000
Plus,
plus 550 or plus.
plus the 900.
And these costs are 3 years old. Keep that in mind. The cost of
Okay.
asphalt has gone up significantly in the past 3 years. That alone.
Okay. So that final, I'm sorry, so that final, let's say, option, let's just look at 26, that 986,000 is the total mill and overlay? Plus,
Which I think you. I think you unmuted.
Did I?
No, that was AJ.
Yeah, it was me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my bad.
Okay, so going back to the slides at the beginning, the options, you're referring to the widened to 26 feet.
right, so I
that
get the
900
additional 550,000 because we're widening it. But then for the full, does that 986 include the additional mill and overlay plus?
Okay, so to explain what that means, an additional $550,000 if we mill and overlay and construct a 2-foot wider strip.
Right, correct.
To a full depth.
Okay,
So that's where the additional cost from is
that would be
mostly
additional on top of the
on top of the
130,000.
130,000.
Okay.
Yes, and that represents the material and the labor to excavate down that far and to place the sub-base material and then pave over that. And then the 986,000 would be if we fully reconstructed the road in addition to the 150,000 we currently have.
So as the town manager said, then like widening to 26,000 feet is 550,000 plus 160,000.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. What I've heard both here and when we met at the school from residents, one of the recurring concerns over and over was parking as a rationale for widening, concerns about parking. So I'm attracted to the idea. I wouldn't have thought of this, so thank you for thinking of it and showing us the option of possibly cutting in parking spots throughout the street. Do we have a sense of how many might be reasonable to expect up to? I know there's budgetary concerns there too. We don't just.
so off the top of my head, because I did not make a note of that, I think we were looking at 14 or 15 combination of 2 and 3 stall installations.
Okay,
And it was mostly shoehorned in between the utility poles on the south side and on the north side where it didn't have a major impact on somebody's lawn, because that was
Right.
something we talked about in June. If we were to, widen the road to the 28-foot option, this had tremendous impact to the properties on both sides of the
for
road.
sure.
Grading wise, driveway grade wise, landscape wise, the whole business.
Thanks, and I'm sure the residents can, and in fact, probably will speak to the needs for parking tonight, so we can hear from them. But do we have a sense in terms of your, sort of your, if there is such a thing, like an average street's need for parking on any given day? Is it, do we see a half a dozen cars on a street, or do we see 25, or do, is there a way of sort of assessing that need, or is that?
That's an interesting question because it wasn't one I have ever thought about. I haven't driven down there during the day and counted
Right.
them. We did do a traffic speed analysis. We had the police put the traffic measuring device, whatever we use, I forget what kind we have
Right.
out there, and we did get some, data on speeds and volumes, but I didn't think to have anybody check and see about daytime versus nighttime parking demand.
Yeah, and maybe folks will help us understand that need so we can get a sense of it. And because I think we have all a responsibility, and our taxpayers share that responsibility to make sure we're stewarding our resources economically and effectively. And so if there's a way to have this project be the most economical, but yet hear and respond to the needs of the residents for some parking accommodations, that sounds attractive to me. I'd like to talk more about that, but I don't have anything else right now. Thank you.
Councilor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation. First question was just with regards to the review process that GM2 did. Can you just talk a little bit more about what that looked like and where those test pits were, et cetera?
I can't tell you where they were. I wasn't here then. I can tell you it was either 3 or 5. They were spaced along the road, and it had to be more than 5.
Yeah, I think there was 6 or 8, to be honest with you.
6 or 8.
I don't have.
And they were primarily focused on the south side because one of the comments, as I understand it, that drove this was that the catch basins are offset on the south side. They're inletted. And the thought was that the road was narrowed and that these catch basin locations indicated that. So they looked at more places on the south side than they did on the north. And they did not find any sign of sub-base material or anything that indicate that a road had been there previously. In conversation with other residents, though, it was pointed out to me that the road, being as old as it is, it may have never had a sub-base, that it was originally what we call an oil seal road, where they just put waste oil and sand. And then eventually, over the time when Newington grew, it eventually got paved, and it may never have gotten a proper base under it in the first place. I don't have any way of verifying that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we could dig the road up and see what we find, but that's not something we're inclined to do at the moment.
So
Obviously, if you request it, we'll send Jimmy out there and dig holes, but that was an interesting thought that I had not had, that the idea was that the road had never been built right in the first place.
sure.
Because that's not an assumption you tend to make. You tend to think of our roads as all being properly constructed, but the age of the road does indicate that there's some potential for that to be true.
I see.
So what GM2 did was to go and try and determine whether or not a road had ever been built off the sides of it. And their report says that they didn't see any sign of that.
I see. And that was with that in mind, the age of the road and the possibility that it may have been constructed differently, or that
I
came
can't
afterwards.
say that they looked at it that way either. I know I would not have. I likely would have gone in there with we'll call it a bias, and say, oh, I'm looking for evidence of a road, not evidence that the road was never here, but it was just on the surface at one time. It's one of these things where you have a resident that's old enough to have been here long enough,
Sure.
who says, well, it's possible. Well, sure, it is possible. And I have to admit that it's a possibility because of the age of the road, that it was never built like I would build a road today.
Sure.
I mean, nobody in my profession in their right mind would build a road the way I just described. Not if we want to keep a job.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So I guess the other question I had was, and I've talked with other residents, and in addition to the parking concerns that Councilor Page laid out, there's also always been a safety concern too, just about, and obviously this is a significant part of your presentation. Folks' kids feel like, they're in the front yard, and, if they step 1 foot off the front yard, suddenly they're in the middle of the damn road. It's like, there's not much room for error there. And so one question I had, in addition to these options, was there any review of temporary speed bumps at all on this road? Those speed bumps that you can put up and pull off? I know that there's some concerns about permanent ones because of the plowing and what that might, do to machines and the.
Are you
wear
referring
and
to the
tear.
hard rubber ones?
Yeah, those are the ones that I've seen,
Okay.
but
I
you would
can
have
tell
more
you, I
suggestions
didn't,
than I would.
I can tell you, I didn't think of them.
Okay.
I can tell you, we did look at the idea of speed bumps, and we kind of dismissed it out of hand because in New England, we tend to find speed bumps disappear with the snow.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to go that route. That being said, we could entertain the idea of what is now known as a speed hump. And an example of that is a longer drawn out speed bump instead of having that short jerky bump. These things are 5 to 6 feet wide. An example of this would be if you've recently been over to Cabela's in East Hartford, the old Pratt and Whitney, well, it's not old, it's still Pratt and Whitney. But if you drive that inside road to get to Cabela's, which I do frequently, they have at least 3 along that route, and
Are those long
you
humps?
slowly drive up them and down the other side. And their posted speed limit is 25 miles an hour, just like Camp Avenue is. So that's something we could incorporate without a lot of aggravation. I don't know how it would be received. Obviously, time will tell.
Just one point on that. We do follow the MUTCD, which is Municipal Traffic Code. And they found out that the temporary speed bumps and the speed humps do not really act as speed calming. So they don't technically recommend them as something to use on streets for speed calming. So that's just something to think about too, because we do follow the traffic code.
Okay.
So if that's something that the town, I mean, there are towns that do it. I know there are plenty of towns in Massachusetts that use them.
Yeah.
If that's what the council chooses, we would do that, but they're not recommended for speed calming. So that's just something to think of too.
Sure. I mean, I imagine on some of these longer roads where they are, where you often see them, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But on something that's a short corridor like this,
Mhm.
maybe there's a possibility there that, it does increase at least the cognizance that, hey, you're driving through a neighborhood here. You can't just be speeding your way through the damn thing. You gotta slow down and, know where you are.
I think if we were to incorporate it, I would put it at the stops bars, at the stop signs at Lloyd. Is there stop sign at Lloyd?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. So as you approach that intersection, if you don't stop for the sign, you're gonna find the speed hump.
Sure.
If I was to recommend that course of action, that's where I would put them.
Okay.
But I do agree with Rob too, that we do tend to follow the MUTC and other road design guides, and it's not recommended, but it could work.
And that includes for those long humps as well, those,
They tend to see them more in parking lots.
okay.
And again, it's the same kind of idea of putting it at the stop sign. If you were to go with this, you'd have alternate at the stop signs on either side of Lloyd. So it's an option for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilor Mankey?
Yeah, I just would thank you for your presentation. I know we've discussed this many times in the past, and I appreciate the fact that you looked outside the box of other options to calm the traffic and then to provide parking. I think those are looking outside the box, things I hadn't heard before. Nowhere in my expertise of being a town councilor does it say I'm a traffic engineer or how to design roads. So I have to, in this case, defer to the professionals. So I appreciate the professionalism of being here to present the professional opinion of how we should proceed here. I just would comment, I think if we brought anybody on any street in town, if we surveyed any street, if we were to just randomly pick a street, everybody would complain that the traffic is too fast on their street. And that the cars go too fast and the cars don't pay attention and the kids are out on the streets and in their front yards. And I think we all, I know on my street, I would like a speed bump because there are cars that come whipping around the corner and I think they go too fast. Even when I back out of the driveway, sometimes I look, there's nobody coming, but then I back out, there's somebody, coming around the corner. I think if there's anything we can do in this town is we should just slow down a little bit. All over it. I think that's important, but I do appreciate the fact that you brought new ideas to the table. I think those are well worth considering. And thank you for your presentation.
Interesting point to your comment. When we did the speed study, in was it July? What's the date on that? June into July, yeah. The average speed over 7 days was 19 miles per hour, and the, what we call 85th percentile speed was just under 25. Now, that's not to say there aren't people who speed, but they're out of the normal range. They're the outliers if you're looking at it statistically.
Yeah.
Problem is that speeder who hits somebody,
Right, exactly.
outlier or not, is
Yeah, it's still in constellations that it's one person was speeding. In that.
correct.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Rao?
Yeah, again, thanks for your presentation coming back. I know we've had a lot of discussions and also a lot of folks in our audience have been part of this participation as well. A couple of questions, and one, Councilor Plourd touched on other concerns that we've heard are, children, pedestrians, people, walking their dogs at any given time of the day. And also the speed and the volume of traffic during certain times of the day. So first question would be, of these options, I don't want to say best, but is there an option, or are there options that might be preferable to address those issues of speed, volume, in terms of the public safety of people and bicycles on that road? And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, one thought is keeping the road at its 26 feet, it would be optimal, because the more narrow the road, the more apt people are to drive slow.
24.
24, I'm sorry, more than 26. At 24 feet would keep traffic at a lower speed, I would think. If you go to a wider road, that the motorists would have a tendency to drive faster. So that's one technique in slowing down traffic. If that's a major concern, which it seems to be amongst the residents.
And I think some folks also, and I just thought of this as you were talking, that there's a concern that even though there's only designated parking on one side of the street, people park on both sides of the street, or there's so much on-street parking that also will it causes a problem and essentially constricts the width of the road as well.
Well, it does, which is in itself an unofficial traffic calming technique.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't design a road where parked cars are the reason speeds aren't higher. But in this case, that's pretty much what's happening, because we do allow parking on the one side. It narrows the travel lane. We do know a narrower road, or a road that, say, for instance, is lined with trees or something like that, reduces speed.
I was just thinking that some of the options that you mentioned with, staggered parking might be helpful for some folks who have, more than, I'll say, 2 vehicles, because a lot of families have at least 2 vehicles now. That seems as though that might help somewhat in terms of the amount of parking that we're seeing on Camp Avenue at the moment. The other question I had is, if there is a higher volume of traffic at specific times of the day, has any thought been given to a sign, an electronic sign or something that would designate one way or specific turns? You kind of mentioned that, but it would be 24/7 during certain times of the day. And I'm thinking, I work in Hartford, and if you go up Park Street from Main Street, at certain times of the day, there is a no right turn onto, I think it's Broad Street. Has that been considered, or would that be something, with that understanding that, or the thought that you wouldn't be able to make, say, a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn from Willard Avenue, or something that it would kind of constrict or deter people from using Camp as a cut-through?
I have seen those used successfully where you have overhead lights, like stoplights.
Yeah, and this is an overhead light.
Yeah, and I don't see putting a stoplight on Camp Avenue. I'm not sure how you would get compliance with just a regular road edge sign. which is why we looked at the islands as an option for that. So if we made it so you could only come in from Maine and go out on Willard or vice versa, or something to that effect.
I was thinking that you probably would have to have some kind of an electronic
Yeah.
overhead sign.
I've never even looked into those, so. I can speak to them.
Well, we don't really have the volume of traffic you
Yeah.
usually use those for. So it didn't come into play in my mind. We could look into it. I wouldn't say no, I don't think it's the best place for it.
Okay, no, it was just a thought, and it's, you know, it's something that I come across,
Mhm.
which, again, it's in the city, but it is a
I
deterrent.
mean, I know the area of Prague used to have their office between Main Street and, I forget the name of the one, but I often turned on to park to get to their offices.
Yeah.
I don't remember the sign, but maybe I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Tiniakis?
Hey there, I got a few for you guys. So for option B, like the coming in one way thing, you said West Hartford is doing this.
Mhm.
Do you have any like idea about how successful it's been, what kind of impact it's had on their end?
Well, they tell me they like it. That being said, I don't know how else we would measure it.
Do you know why they did it? Was it to
Well, they
reduce
had-
traffic? or-
They have neighborhoods where they have problems like this one.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, this is a solution we think we're gonna try. Now, that being said, I can tell you both in Meriden and Middletown, who were early adopters of traffic calming through road geometry, all of the improvements, for instance, Meriden did to the downtown area where they did the offset parking like we described, they subsequently filled back in. They abandoned the idea. I kind of wish Paul Dixon was here because he could tell more about that. Paul used to be director of community development in Meriden. My familiarity is only because I live there. So I'd seen what happened. Oh, you put these in, this is great. As a civil engineer, I've been following this. 3 years later, they took all the islands out. Never able to get an answer out of staff why they did that, just one of those, well, we didn't think it worked. And I tend to think it was more because of the snow plowing operations. This is an area where there's the town hall, the police station, the courthouse, several other businesses were all in this area. And by doing this type of island traffic calming, it did not help flow of traffic. But that area doesn't have good flow of traffic anyway. Never has. That's one of the reasons they're continually trying to revise their traffic flow there. Middletown tried it in the area of Wesleyan University. In some cases, they still have roads that were turned into a series of S curves. But these are low speed areas like this, where you're not looking at, let's say, for instance, Route 66, Washington Street, where that is a 4-lane state controlled road. That's as straight as an arrow until you get to the railroad bridge and then it turns and whatnot. But some of these areas off main roads by Wesleyan still have the old vestige of the traffic calming that they developed where they just turn the road slightly within the right of way. And it is definitely going to slow speeds down because you can't see very far down the road. So drivers do slow down a lot. And in an area where you have high pedestrian traffic, a university, I think that was successful, which is why they're probably still there. So this is one example where it worked, one example where it didn't. So it's traffic calming is not a one size fits all. And so to pick an option that we're going to have to live with is why we're here tonight.
And then as far as you said the Edgewood's parking would all be on the south side?
No, they
So
can
you
be
would
either
do it on
side,
both?
but this now is one of those things where if we're going to keep the no parking restriction on one side, it doesn't make sense to then put parking spots there.
Yeah.
So whatever we choose to do, if we remove the no parking restriction, we can go either side. If we keep the no parking restriction, we have to favor the other side.
Would it be feasible to have the parking edges on one side and then we could add a sidewalk on the opposite road side?
We have the right of way to do that. I don't know if I would. We'd have to look at that more, I think.
There's sidewalks and walls.
If we did sidewalks with the road the way it currently is, we have to go to the north because the utility poles are on the south. The cost of moving a utility pole is roughly $10,000 per pole. There's 26 of them. That's $250,000 in moving utility poles. My experience with that process is it can take well over a year to move all those poles. They're not overly receptive to doing it if you don't knock one down with your car.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So I have other places in town where we've gone through this process of trying to replace old poles. What's the end of that street off at the end?
Cedarwood?
No, the one over by. We have a cul-de-sac over by Firehouse 3, I
Oh,
think it
Summit
is.
Chapman. Summit or Chapman?
Summit.
Summit.
So we have a problem with low-hanging wires. Last year at this time, I made a request to Eversource to look into this. To my surprise, by Christmas, they had a new pole. They have yet to move the wires. And it's not just Eversource, it's everybody who's got a utility on the pole. But the pole was the easy part. The wires are still on the old pole a year later. So I would expect that if we are going to try and move utilities, this is a long process.
My last one is when we had our public forum with the people who live there, the concern that a lot of people brought up was the emergency vehicles being able to fit down the road. So if your recommendation is just to leave it as it is, like, have you spoken to like our police department, our EMS department about if that's an actual issue that they're concerned about traveling up and down that road?
Well, they don't have an issue with the no parking restriction because that's what made it work. So if we kept status quo, LTA is happy with that. I hate to speak for Lieutenant Dean with him not being here, but that's our conversation with him.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So Counselor Nagel.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the outline that you gave us in advance to see and the specifics in what's presented. It's very clear. I've been having problems tonight. I've had it other times in this room in terms of hearing what people have been saying. No offense, but I have. So if I have some specific questions, I'll need to look it over. If you don't mind, I can talk to you later. Some of them I think have been answered. I had to mention that. I don't know if out in the public, whether they've had real difficulties hearing or not. I see some heads shouting yes. That's another question for another day. It's come up before. It seems to me that there are choices, but there are no like good choices that will that everyone will approve of. And I appreciate the options. I'm not an expert to determine which are the best or not. I live in town, but I don't live in that specific neighborhood. So what may seem appropriate in terms of turning one way or another may be appropriate to those of us here who don't live in that neighborhood. That may not for the residents that live there. Costs. If I realize we have funds to just do the basic overlay or the $160,000. If indeed we and or you choose some of the other options are all, I realize it's going to come from us, but specifically, where can some of those monies come from aside from increasing the budget? Maybe that's a question more for the town manager.
Yeah, I don't think we have an easy answer right now. We would either have to reallocate or presumably go through the, this would be part of the discussion for the next year's CIP, I think is the simple answer to it. But there's not a silver bullet answer to that question, Dave.
I didn't think there was, but I thought maybe there might be funds for some things. It's not public. It needs, I figured it needs to be asked.
Yeah.
What kind
We're in
of,
budget season.
go ahead.
We are in budget season.
Yeah, there is, yes. Timelines. I know public, whatever they think in terms of this being done are getting frustrated or are wondering, when will this be completed? If we just go with the basic $160,000, what is the kind of timeline, if it's approved, that it would take to accomplish it?
Next July, that's when you're
Yeah,
bringing,
we
we would
could-
incorporate it into our
Yeah.
annual road pavement program.
If we went to any one of these other options, or let's say the complete option, what kind of, and I realize it may be an unfair question, but what kind of timeline are we looking at generally?
We would probably start any of the traffic calming islands, a month or so before we would do the mill and overlay as a prep work. Whether we do that with staff or we have that farmed out. And you would do the preparatory work. You'd prepare the base, excavate, prepare the base, have it ready to go. When the mill comes in and does the milling, when it's done, you would probably notice there's a difference. So when you do the paving, you would incorporate that in with the paving part of the mill and overlay.
I realize that's also seasonal in terms of some of the things done. You would do it in phases?
No, well, again, it depends on the extent. And it also depends on whether or not we're using, highway forces to do this, or if we're doing the prep work with a contractor. If we're doing the prep work with a contractor, we're working around their schedule with their other work. There's a lot of work and not a lot of contractors right now. This is why things like the Alumni Road project took so long to get to the point where we have a contractor. That's due to start in 1 or 2 weeks now. We would have liked to have done that last June when the schools emptied out. So in that time frame of trying to acquire a contractor who is willing to do the work, Alumni Road is such a small job in their world that we ended up waiting until the end of their normal season to get their attention. So there's a large volume of work in construction right now and not a large volume of contractors, certainly not qualified ones. So what we would be looking at here is, okay, we get into a discussion with a contractor about doing this preparatory work and setting a schedule for them with the understanding that you have anywhere from, say, May until July to get this work done and fit it in where you can, because that's the environment we're in now. The days of having too many contractors and not enough work are not here right now. So this is, I hate to use the term, it is what it is, because it's overused, but that's exactly where this applies.
So are we looking at years?
No, we're looking at next
If it's, are we looking at a year, or, I don't want to pin you down unfairly to a specific time frame, but
if we don't look at it for next year's construction, I think we start looking at having a road that deteriorates beyond the point of mill and overlay. And then whether we like it or not, we're looking at one of the more expensive options. Now we have to fund that option. Now that funding process delays however long it takes to get either the funding for that project or not funding some other work. So this is just like my household budget. If I want to do the driveway and the roof in the same year, I did the roof, driveway's next year.
I understand. Thank you, and I will get in touch with you if there is something that I've gleaned afterwards, or if there's further conversation here that's come to mind that can clarify things in my mind.
Sure.
Thank you.
Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. I was intrigued originally by the stall idea, the parking stalls. I guess the devil in details of whose house those stalls go in front of. And then do they park their cars in front of them? So that means the neighbors don't get to park their cars in front of them. And so if I'm parked in front of Councilor Page's house, then he doesn't get to park in front of his house, and so therefore then there's this issue of, how come you park in front of my house all the time and I got to walk over here? And then the other issue is during November to April, when we can't park on the street anyway. Does that mean we can still park there? I would assume not, because if you're plowing the snow, you're going to plow the snow all over my car anyway. So those things,
locked in.
Yeah, got locked in, and then I'll be complaining that
Look at him smiling at that.
Yeah, my car got plowed in. So originally I thought that would be a good solution, but I can see that would also probably lead to dissension amongst the neighbors of how come you're parking in front of my house and I got to walk over here or you took feet off of my front yard, but my neighbor over here has his full width of his front yard, and that might not be the best for neighborhood cohesion. So that might not be the best option. But again, I thank you for the thought anyway. I think it might after giving it more consideration, that might not be the best option. But again, I'm not a professional. I just did the Holy Town Council.
You have a valid point. Psychology doesn't factor into engineering all that often.
Yeah. And I can see people out in front of putting cones out by saving their parking place. So when they come on board, they can park in their parking place when the people across the street want to park on it.
Councilor Draco?
I guess more of a comment or perhaps a question. I think what started out as a simple, mill and overlay project turned into trying to resolve, I can see about 5 or 6 different issues. Volume of traffic, speed, parking, just repair and potholes, safety pedestrians and cyclists. Then as Councilor Mankey said earlier, these issues are not unique to Camp Avenue. I live on a street with 13 houses and speeding is absurd. But again, if this is the time, if we can address some of those issues, this is the time to do it. Your statistics about speeding were interesting. I would have thought that the speed would have been higher than what you recorded.
I thought it was gonna be.
As did I.
And the fact that in many instances, we were even talking on Cedar Street and some of the other towns and other roads in town, road diets are the solution to both speeding and volume. So, that's got to be taken into account, I think, as we look at.
At 24 feet wide, it basically is a road diet.
Right, exactly. You can't go any smaller, but expanding it are we going to create more issues? I mean, I don't know. But is there any of these solutions? Like I said, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 6 issues all of a sudden that you're trying to resolve versus just a simple mill and overlay. I don't see any of these options being able to resolve all of them. That's the unfortunate. Unfortunately, so, and as Councilor Page had said earlier in the beginning, looking at cost, but also trying to get the biggest bang from the buck in resolving some of these issues is going to be, it's going to take a lot of thought. And certainly a lot has been put into it already, but I know I'll be curious. I know there's people here from the neighborhood that are going to give their thoughts. And also the impact on adjoining streets as well, because now some of these options are going to be impacting adjoining streets also, so. But before I stop, I want to just say, Rob, thank you for the leaves. Your people have done a great job. Thank you. Okay.
Amen.
Councilor Mankey?
Just last thing, do we have any data on? Yeah, they did their third time in my house today. Do we have any data on speeding on Harding Avenue?
No, we did not ask. We could ask.
Because I think Harding is right next door. It's a wider street. And I think from my experience driving down Harding Avenue, people go a lot faster on Harding Avenue when I drive down on Camp Avenue. So I do both,
Sure.
But I bet you because it's wider, people go faster on Harding than they do on Camp because it's wider street. It'd be interesting to know if that's because now it's a wider street and it is a school district, which is, you should be even more careful on Harding, I would think, but they go faster, so.
They could probably have them out there next week.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know. Thank you. I promise not to say anything else.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I do have just a few questions, sorry. You've answered most of them, but I wanted a couple of things. If we were to widen it, either 26 feet, 28 feet, how would we determine which side of the street that space comes from? Would it be a little bit on each side, or would it be one side or the other side? How would that be done?
Well, to keep costs down, I'd want to go to the north, but
Okay.
that would be an unfair burden on those property owners. So at that point, you're trying to split what you got now. So a foot each side, 2 feet each side. Obviously, after it's surveyed, we'd know more. I mean, we haven't been working on survey data here. We're working on aerial photographs, which are nice pictures, but they're not the level of detail we actually designed from if we were going to go to a project for that. And that would be really where we get the information we need to try and minimize impact on landscaping. There's some fairly nice landscaped yards out there. I personally know any of these people, but they did a nice job on their yards. My bulldozer won't care.
Right. Just more of a comment. As someone who lives in the area, I live right off of Lloyd Street. The picture of the island on Lloyd and Camp irritated me just looking at that picture. So I appreciated your comment on that. But, you know, to that point, you know, when I looked at that, obviously just, I was thinking selfishly, but that to me looks like it would create problems on Harding, you know what I mean? And if you
It would.
can't get through, now they're gonna, people, it would just create more problems. I don't, that doesn't seem like the solution to me. This has been alluded to, but it just sort of definitively, what does the research say when it comes to street widening and speed?
The wider the open travel passage, the faster speed goes.
Okay.
I can show you textbooks from when I was an undergrad. This is not new. So
It was
it's,
10 years ago.
thank you. But no, we actually studied Merritt Parkway.
Okay.
When I was in school. This was more like 30 years ago, but thank you. I had a professor who was the retired chief engineer from DOT, and he had a lot to do with that last round of widening on the Merritt Parkway. So that was a favorite subject for his, of his. I believe he's still around, Dr. Bob Gubala, but yeah, we looked at that a lot because it was a favorite of his. And it was one of those things where as they started over the years from its original construction, widening out those rock cuts, speed increased. And they quantified it. They basically verified what the engineering calculations show. If you went and ran the numbers on that and said, okay, this is what we got, was part of what we call the roadside road development, road edge development, part of our highway design, and say, okay, how far back do you have to go? And the farther you back you go, the faster travel. And it's a known thing.
Thank you. So like what I'm seeing too, again, you know, we're sort of at 24 feet now, adding another 2 feet or another 4 feet eliminates, if we were to do that, it would eliminate the need for the parking ban on the one side of the street, but then that kind of brings us back to where we're at now.
But
in a
you'd still
sense,
get the
right?
emergency vehicles through, which
The
was.
emergency vehicles would be able to get through with both sides of the parking, okay, but in terms of like safety on the street, it'd be kind of the same that it is right now.
Probably a fair statement.
Okay. You know, this has been an issue that's predated us for the most part in this council, and I think, you know, our position is that we want to see it resolved, because to your point, the street is deteriorating and it needs to be paved one way or the other. So I think, you know, that's, you know, we want to be able to address whatever, all these issues that we can address in the space of doing this, but I think the biggest pressing issue is the condition of the road right now, and I think that has to be addressed. So I'm happy we're gonna figure that out at least in the next year. But that, you know, the one thing I would like to find out about, Councilor Mankey kind of alluded to too, is with the carve outs. Obviously, how many it would be good to get, how many we could feasibly do. And I would like to get some clarification on if we were to do that, would those cars parked there be subjected to the overnight parking ban? Because if they are, it kind of defeats the point over of doing that if it's through 6 months.
How does the overnight parking ban read?
I don't exactly know, but certain times, I think it's 2 AM to 7 AM or something like that during the winter months. Cars are not allowed to park on the street.
So just overnight?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just overnight.
Unless we get a significant snowstorm, anything over 6 inches, we'll put a parking ban on, so that there's no on-street parking at all.
Yeah, that's the other information I would like to get a little more insight on, but we really appreciate you guys, all your work you've done on this and bringing us here. You know, we got that meeting in June and here tonight, so we really appreciate all your work that you put into this. Any other council comments or questions?
Just thanks for all your work.
Yeah, thank you. And thank everyone for coming out and bearing with us on this process. We really appreciate that. Thank you, guys. I think you're staying, Rob, right?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, Chris.
You want to hang around for questions? See how it goes.
Change the agenda right now. There. Okay.
Thanks, Margaret. I just chair so.
Hello again, Rob.
The town manager had brought to my attention that there was some interest from the council about possibly starting a leaf composting program or organics recycling program. We've done it in the past, you know, what the options are. So I just want to kind of touch on some really basic stuff tonight, just to inform you on two of the options that we might have in town that are viable. One that I've already started moving forward on, but these are two options that most towns do, towns similar to ours. So with that, I will get started. So just gonna go over some basic definitions real quick. Organics recycling is the activities involved in the collection and processing of organic material, i.e. food scraps. Basically like our recycling program, it would go in a bin. So that's kind of the process in that, because sometimes the two words are used synonymously, organic recycling and composting. But composting is the actual process of breaking down the decomposed organic matter, including leaves, and making it into a nutrient-rich product. So one is the action basically of picking up materials, and the other is actually the chemistry of it. They're used synonymously, but I just kind of want to get that out there so we get started. We're all familiar with this. These are what our streets look like throughout the month of November. And they're eventually brought to the transfer station. Here's a picture of our crew picking up the leaves. Once they're picked up through the vacuums, they're brought to the transfer station, and from the transfer station, they are delivered to our contractor in Ellington, where the contractor, actually processes the material. We do not process material currently at our transfer station. It's strictly transferred out to the facility in Ellington. And here is basically a picture of the Ellington facility where the leaves have been fully composted. And from there they are they're sold for gardens, vegetative gardens and things like that. Just so you know, we as a town collect about 11,000 cubic yards of leaves in a given year. So to put that in perspective, that's about 120 tractor trailer loads. So we collect a lot of leaves in this town. And we do, you know, within a 6-week process. And this leaf composting is something that we could possibly do in Newington. When we closed the landfill and turned it into a transfer station, we had the contractor create a leaf composting area. So we had not moved forward with that. Previous administrations didn't really have any interest in it. We didn't move forward in it, but I did start the process with the DEP to get the permit for leaf composting. It's a long process working with the state and the DEP. But I do have a draft of the permit, which I have to look over one more time and submit it to DEP for their approval. So this is something that we could possibly do within the next year or two. It wouldn't be in a huge volume just because we don't have the space. We're limited with the space that we have at the transfer station. So possibly we could take maybe 500 cubic yards of the material that's currently being transferred to or being delivered to our contractor and try and do that in-house. We have the ability to do it. It's basically put all the leaves in a windrow, and every so many days you turn them, and eventually through the process of chemistry, it turns into leaf, either compost or leaf mulch. Leaf mulch is not quite the final end product, but we certainly try to attain something like that. But this is something, should the council decide to move forward with, this is something that we could probably bring to the town within the next year or two. And then the next is we'll talk about the food scrap recycling or the organics recycling, which would be very similar to, which is in some towns similar to the recycling program. The slide on the left-hand side are the items that are accepted through the food scrap program. It's basically anything, not only just food, but any white napkins, white paper plates, anything basically organic that doesn't have any dyes or colors in it can be processed. So what you do is you take those items and you would put it in a biodegradable plastic bag, which is what you see on the right-hand side. And then you can bring what some towns are doing is, and what I would recommend to the town to try a smaller program would be to bring it to our transfer station. And there we would have a dumpster very similar to this, or possibly a couple small carts, depending on the option that we chose. And the residents would be able to bring it to the transfer station. And this is what most towns are doing. Most towns are not going to a full-blown food scrap or organics recycling program like we have with our blue containers. They just don't see the residents actually getting that involved. Because with recycling, there's state mandates on recycling. There is no state mandate for residential food scrap recycling right now. Basically, it's those that really would want to do it would be the residents that would get involved. And this is something that we could possibly do in town. And once it's put in a dumpster, it's brought to a facility such as this. There's multiple facilities. There's one in Southington, there's one in Ellington, there's one in Berlin. And there it is, it's processed into a final product, which is very similar to the leaf compost, but this is made up of food scraps. And they're either mixed in for as an ingredient in food for animals, or some of it is bagged and sold, from I like Home Depot or Lowe's and stuff like that for people to use as far in their gardens. This would be a little bit more tricky to get started. I know Rocky Hill did just start a program within the past couple months. I haven't talked to Joe Lentini, my counterpart there, on how we got the program started and how the residents have taken to it. I do know that Manchester also just started a program. They have 2 drop-off locations, a little bit bigger community than ours, and it's been a little bit light as far as the residents. They do provide the bags to the residents. They originally were going to be charging the residents, but because they weren't getting the input, they decided to start giving away the bags, and he hasn't really seen any changes in what the residents are bringing to the transfer station. So I think it's those people that want to do it will do it. Those that have no interest probably would not participate. But like I said, this one's going to be a little bit more trickier if you chose to go that route. There'd have to be a lot of outreach. We'd have to find a contractor that would be able to haul it for us. We'd have to find a receiving facility that'd be willing to take it from us. We'd have to figure out how we would who would purchase the bags, how we would distribute the bags, and this we would also need an addendum to our transfer station permit that we currently have. Because anytime we add any items to that we accept at our transfer station, we have to go through the DEP for them to authorize it. So that is pretty much it. I know I talked a little bit fast. I apologize for that. So if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Before I end, there is a company out of Hartford or West Hartford, Blue Earth. And they're a private company. And I do see them around town. So there are people that are interested in the program. Obviously okay, there you go. So you're familiar with Councilman Raddick. I don't know what the fee is, to be quite honest with you off the top of my head. But I know they provide 5-gallon pails. And I believe they provide the larger toters or containers that we have. So they're in, if we wanted to possibly get involved with them, I don't even know how that process would work. Possibly promote them throughout the town. That might be an option as well, as opposed to us taking on the burden of the program. So that's just one option. So I will leave that up to you guys to ask whatever questions you might have.
Councilor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you very much for putting this together. We appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely.
And staying here late tonight.
Yeah.
Budget implications, the cost for each of the respective programs leaves. Do we have a sense based on other towns' experience of
As far, I'm sorry, is the
budgeting, like the costs?
recycling program?
Yeah, for either of these composting programs.
The leaf composting program, there would be no cost to us.
It's neutral.
It's neutral, yes, because we already have the equipment. So that's not a big deal. We would actually be defraying some of the costs. So the 500 cubic yards that would not be going to the facility
Right.
would be a cost savings.
Just
on our
wanted to
part.
underline that because,
Yeah.
we have to ask the
Yeah,
budget.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, it's not, like I said, not a huge savings. Maybe you're talking $5,000 to $10,000, but then again, it's still a savings. It's still a savings in the program. And then that end product, if the town chooses, we could either give it to residents, or I shouldn't say I know, but I believe the town of Weathersfield actually sells their product to a contractor. So there might be some revenue at the end too, depending on how good the product is and depending on what we choose to do with it.
Okay. And then with the food composting, again, from town's experience, the cost for that?
It's actually minimal. I believe for the monthly charge for the collection of the containers, it was $95 each for Manchester. And they had like 6 containers. As far as the facility, what they charge, he didn't have a cost for me at the time, so I couldn't speak to that.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
the collection is minimal.
Okay.
And moreover, we would save money from less waste
Yes.
picked up overall.
Right.
So it would
Depending on- yeah,
probably
so-
be,
Yeah,
even for the food, it would probably be a net savings.
yeah, to that point, every ton of food scrap that is diverted from the waste stream is $110 savings. So 100 tons in a year, you're talking possibly $10,000. So there's something to gain from that as well.
So just in general, and you've mentioned this, I think it seems like educational programs or some sort of public service announcements about this would be critical because many folks might wonder, why the heck would I want to go out of my way, have
Yes.
one more task to do,
Yeah.
then bring it to this place down
Yeah.
the road on Main Street, to understand the benefits, of both the economic benefits, but maybe more important, the environmental benefits.
Every town that I've spoken to, because there are a few, Middletown has a program and there's some communities down in Fairfield that have programs as well. And they do say outreach is the key because a lot of people don't either understand it or what the benefits are
Right.
to the program. So outreach and communication with the residents is definitely key.
So I'm enthused about this and would love for us to consider and to invite the town manager and all to consider moving forward with this, if it seems viable and with all the benefits you've mentioned, but
Yeah.
I'd love other people's input, obviously, it's just my opinion. So,
Okay.
but thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Councilman Jacob?
Yeah, I guess, most of it was based on what Councilor Page had asked, but, I know, I think last year or 2 years ago, you talked to us about the leaf composting.
Mhm.
It goes to, the facility and then it gets used either for Scott's, isn't it Scott's, I think?
Well,
Or
yes,
is it-
it's Scott's, yes, in Ellington. Yep, it's Scott's. Yep.
So do we pay the facility to dispose of our leaves there?
We pay a hauling fee.
We pay a hauling fee.
Yeah, so we pay a certain amount for each truckload that they haul to their facility, yes.
Okay, so we would not be able to, because we have so many leaves, it would just be a portion of it that we.
Oh, yes, we don't have a facility big enough to compost the 11,000 cubic yards.
So what would be would staff be able to, would your current staff be able to assume this responsibility in addition to, because if it's only saving $5,000 to $10,000 a year, I'm just curious as to what the benefit to the town would be.
So the actual process of processing the material is actually pretty simple. There's two ways, there's a couple ways of doing it. There's a turning process where you just take a loader, you set your cells up and you turn them over every week. So we have an operator that goes to the transfer station every Monday, to basically clean up from the weekend from our residents and push up grass and these. So that would just be added to his duties for the day. And that would be a learning process for us. We'd start very small with a couple cells, a couple, maybe 100 cubic yards the first season and see how well we can keep up with it. So I don't believe that it would be a huge, an added burden to the operator that goes up there on a Monday. And we don't, like I said, we already have the equipment. There is an attachment that can be placed on one of our loaders that actually turns it, so you just drive over it and it turns it like a rototiller, a very large rototiller. That's about $25,000 to $35,000. I don't believe we would need something like that in the small scale that I would hope to do.
So you'd envision then using, because we'd have to get rid of it at some point, so either opening it up to town or our town Parks and Rec or something using.
Yeah, so
whatever we create.
so the Parks and Rec department or Parks and Grounds rather, could use it if that's something that they would need. We could set aside a bin for our residents to come in on Saturdays and Sundays and use it. Or like I said, the town of Weathersfield actually sells their product. They go out to bid and they sell the product. So that's an option too. So we have multiple options as what we can do with the end product.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Riley?
Thanks. Yeah, as I said, because we didn't have any composting program here in town, for the past, it's got to be at least 4 or 5 years, have been working with Blue Earth.
Okay.
And you can have a weekly, a bi-weekly, a monthly pickup. They're very flexible, and I should know the cost, but I don't, but it's extremely reasonable. And then I think it's at least once a year, you get back 3 50-pound bags of compost that you
Okay.
could use. So that may be something, I mean, I would much rather support the food recycling and the leaf composting here in my own community. And then maybe think about, as you just mentioned, an opportunity for residents as well as the town itself to be able to take advantage of the results of all of that work.
Alright.
And so thank you very much for looking into this. This is, I've been excited
Yeah.
and wanted to see something like this
Yeah.
happen for a while. So that this is very good information. Thanks again.
Excellent.
Council Mankey?
And who knew there was money in all those leaves?
Yeah.
I think this, as an amateur gardener, I think it's a great opportunity. I think, I could see myself in the spring going to the to the transfer station and picking up a bag of compost to spread in my garden. I think we should explore it. I think it's a good opportunity to both benefit the residents, but also, use some of those leaves you pick up
Absolutely.
every year, like
Yes.
clockwork, and grind up and instead of sending them out someplace else, we keep some of them here and distribute them to the residents or sell them and help defray the cost of picking them up and grinding them up.
I know, when the town did, have a program many years ago, from my understanding. I've been here 15 years, so it was before I started. And I do believe that program was well received by the residents.
I believe we used to do that, yeah.
Yeah,
We could pick 'em
yeah,
up if
but
you
then
wanted.
the condominiums and things went up around the
Yeah.
transfer station, so they stopped the program.
Yeah.
So,
But I think it's something we certainly should explore. I think we have to lose to try it. If it doesn't work, doesn't work. But
yeah, there's
give it
no
a shot.
fee, the fee for the permit is minimal. I mean, it's
It's-
negligible.
yeah,
Right, so
and-
we could go through with the process and we can start it. If for some reason it doesn't work, we can't handle it.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, so.
Council Floyd?
Thank you, Mayor. The questions I had have been answered, so I just want to thank you so much for this presentation. As an environmentalist, I'm super enthused
Okay.
about this conversation. And as a penny pincher, I'm that much more enthused because it's budget neutral.
Yes.
Or could possibly
Possibly,
defray some
yeah.
costs. So,
Yep.
so I think that's really exciting that this is an opportunity. And I just thank you for your exploration of it. I'm also interested in potential partnerships with Blue Earth and some of these other private companies that have been doing this work. And as Councilor Page said, I think a lot of this has to be accompanied by robust outreach. And like you said, you talked about that in some other communities. Can you, I mean, we can all come up with very quick ideas of what that could look like, but speaking to some of your counterparts, what has that looked like in some other towns?
Some of them have done social media. I know Rocky Hill has done some social media. But the Manchester is actually struggling with that too, because there's obviously a cost when you do mailers. But the social media, they just don't have the residents that are that much involved. So the outreach really it's difficult.
Okay.
So he's actually struggling. That's what he said. They did their original outreach and they got the people that they had gotten that wanted to be part of the program. But now it's kind of stagnated and he's struggling as to what to do next with his second round of outreach. So hopefully he can come up with something good and I can take it
Sure.
home. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be really interested to know, and I don't think this is data that would be readily provided to us, but what the percentage is of our residents. I'm sure it's a negligible amount, but who is using these third-party composting companies and their service?
Yeah.
Again, I don't think they give us that data because we're going to poach their customers maybe, but
Well, a lot of us do our own composting as well.
well, that too,
Sure.
you know?
Besides-
True.
Yeah.
We could have a Recycler of the Year award for the most. recycled.
We can shoot for it.
Serious, I mean, something like that, that makes it fun.
Tons of-
I know, right?
Now, if they count the leaves in front of your yard.
But honestly, I think it'd be really, I think this is a really exciting thing to discuss. And I'm grateful for the foresight for those folks who first, when we switched our town, dump landfill to a transfer station, kept that space intact for exactly this purpose. So
Yeah, that was a major point in what
Yeah.
we wanted to do. So,
absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Council Gonzalez?
I was just wondering, I know you said that Weathersfield is currently doing the leaves. Do you know how much they're able to do for the leaves? I know you said we would have a certain limit as to what we do.
They have a much bigger area than we do. Yes, they have. So I believe that they have all their leaves at that
Oh,
facility.
okay.
Yes, theirs is not, we have our leaf, we would have our leaf compost area along with our transfer station. The area that they have is what they call the stockpile. So that's where all their vegetation goes.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a facility that's accessed by the residents, it's strictly for town forces. So I believe, because I used to work in Lewisburg, I believe all their leaves go up there, and their community is very similar to ours. So I would believe that they're upwards of 10,000.
So that's why they're
If you get-
selling it
Yeah.
to contractors.
Yes, they have, they're gonna have a much, a higher volume of material.
That was just, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Counselor Nagle.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, thank you for the presentation and the clarity of it. This program is totally volunteer, voluntarily. The public can choose to do this or not do this.
If the council wishes to go with the organic recycling program, yes, there's no state statutes, state regulations that require you to recycle food scraps. So this would be totally voluntary, yes.
Okay, and if it is volunteer, is there a way of those who do volunteer get some benefit from it as opposed to those who just choose not to? Or is that a difficult?
That's something to think about. It's quite possible that we could, somewhere what Blue Earth does, we could offer them some compost at the end of the year or something like that. If our leaf composting program goes well, maybe that's something that we could offer them if it's something they
That might be a little more promotion.
A little more
to get
incentive,
more
yeah.
people involved
Yes.
than might otherwise. I also, minor question, what are incidental oils?
Like vegetable oil, cooking oil, things like that. Not motor oil or transmission oil, things like that.
Good.
Something that is organic, basically.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I would say, who would want to throw away potato chips?
That's never happened.
Okay, thank you. Never. That's a crime.
Counselor Clord.
Just very briefly, I just had another question. I'm curious, could the area at the transfer station that could be used for this purpose, is there some possibility that that area could expand or that, there could be some creative solutions to have this coexist alongside some other areas? Or what could that look
Unfortunately,
like?
no. Part of the closure requirement was that we needed to have a certain amount of green space.
Oh, sure.
So unfortunately, if you've ever driven to the backside where the paved area is, there's almost an identical sized area to the, that would be to the north. That we had to leave as green space, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We wanted to pave it, but the DEP didn't allow us to do that.
Got it.
So we could have doubled it, yeah, and it would have been much more beneficial. But unfortunately, they didn't allow us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Rada.
Just a final comment from me as I've been listening and talking about outreach. One that comes to mind pretty readily to me would be the schools, elementary through high school,
Oh, true.
to be able to,
Yes.
I mean, this is just an amazing educational opportunity waiting to happen.
Mhm.
So just, it's a plan.
Yes, good call.
Any other questions or comments from counselors?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Happy Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, you as well.
Definitely. All right, moving right along. Next on the agenda is public participation. If you're in the room and like to speak in public participation, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. If you are on Zoom and would like to speak, please use the raise hand function and we will alternate back and forth between in the room and over Zoom.
Good evening all. Thank you.
Good evening.
Dennis may call it 195 Camp Avenue. You're all very familiar with me. I've been around here for a while. And I just want to give a couple of pointers that were brought up at the meeting, just to kind of clear things up a little bit. I've been on Camp Avenue since 1974. And the date that there was mentioned, 84, is just about right, because I talked to my daughter a few months back and she said, I remember that very clearly. I was about 10 years old when they did that. So that just about fits the right time. So our street has not been addressed since 1985, 86, that long. A while back, we did a survey on that street, and wife and I actually did 3 of them. We presented one to the town council, and it's a copy of it is in the town clerk's office. And I would suggest that you people kind of look at that maybe one more time and see our feelings, what we were looking for to have done. All these proposals that were brought here today was not really one of our concerns. It's nice to have, speeding was brought up, but that was never really a primary concern of what we were looking for. The street was narrowed. And like the engineer, town engineer says, you can see the input where the drainage goes back. That was the original width. And there was no other drains put in that street except one that was put on the north side opposite my house, my neighbor's house. There was never one at all down the street, so they added one. But the street was narrow by the distance of that storm drain, which is about 2 feet. And I'm not gonna say it was 2 feet the other side, but there was a considerable amount almost equal to it. So whatever that street is now, you can almost add 4 feet. That's just about where it was. It was right up next to some telephone poles. The poles were always there. The telephone poles were never a problem. They were always there. On the other side, there's a fire hydrant. The street was about a foot from the fire hydrant, as I recall. So that's really the width of the street. So all we were looking for in our survey is to get the street widened back to the original width so we could have parking back on both sides. And what I didn't hear much about tonight was safety. We need just to make a safety concern for fire ambulances and emergency vehicles. That's all we need to have is parking on both sides so they can get through. That's pretty much what we're looking for. The speeding we can be addressed. Another issue. One of my suggestions would be, put a speed camera on one of the poles in each direction. Take a picture of them. And that's what they're doing all over now. That would be better than putting up everything else up. That'd be, to me, the simplest thing to do. And also, you mentioned about these roundabouts or these at the end of it. No one's ever mentioned about school buses. I don't think they would be very happy about not only going one direction, not getting through that, and plowing in the winter. All that doesn't make sense. And this diagonal parking, one of the pictures you show that one's almost opposite the other one. If one car parks farther up on one point and down here, and you don't widen the street, you're back to the original narrow street and not getting an emergency vehicle. So this parking that you're talking about, again, in my opinion, is not needed. If we just widen it back to the original width, fix it. Remember, when the street was narrow, there was never any curbing in there either. The curbing was added when they narrowed the street, so there was never any curbing there. So maybe they say they dug up. They actually dug up in front of my house too. I wonder why. And they found out that there wasn't nothing on there because back then the roads are all done differently than they are today. So that might be why you're looking at it. But really, all we're looking for is just to hit the street back to where it was originally. So I know that's probably an expensive cost, but we just saved $11 million. Maybe we can find a little bit more somewhere else. So it's one of these things that it's been a long time, and we really need to have something done. And we put up with a lot. Also, not parking on the south side, the property values of the south side, I can tell you, are less than the ones on the north side because they can't park in front of their own house. And someone mentioned about doing the survey about speeding. Not speeding, but the volume of cars going up and down. Well, if you look really closely, when you can't park on one side, where are the people going to park? Look in their front lawns, look in their side yards, look in the backs. They're parking the cars back there now because they can't park in front of their house.
You're about 50 seconds over time.
I'm over, I'm sorry. I thought I had so much time.
No, sorry.
That's fine, doing good. Appreciate the extra minute. That's nice to see because we need that. Thank you for your concern because it really is an issue that we need to address. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
They always tell me to stand up when I go so much. Can you see me?
Yes.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
My name is Neil Robinson. I live at 196 Camp Avenue. And I'm just going to follow up on a couple of things that Dennis brought up. As far as, again, the notion of volume and speed is significantly less than it has been. I've been a resident of 42 years on Camp Avenue. A little bit of history. When they did used to speed up and down Camp Avenue, it goes back to the days of Fafner Barbarian and not having any stop signs on Stoddard or on Camp. And the traffic at that time, Fafner used to get out, just their shift went in just about the same time the high school was getting out. So you would have that traffic backed up all the way down to 7-Eleven, down to the Stoddard light. And people used to hang that left from Willard on the Camp Avenue and go. Because if they tried to do it going down Stoddard, you had the same
thing happened. There was a line of traffic on Main Street going up Stoddard in the other direction. They used to race in each direction. So they put a stop sign on Stoddard, first of all. That seems to be more of a main drag than Camp Avenue was. And that's when we started getting more and more speeders coming down Camp Avenue. Well, then they put the stop, just imagine Camp Avenue, by the way, no stop signs several years when I first moved in on Camp or Lloyd. There were no stop signs at all on Camp or Lloyd. Can you imagine the cars that used to zoom down Camp and the cars that used to cut across on Lloyd? There were a lot of close calls. So they did put stop signs, eventually put stop signs on Camp Avenue. And then I believe it's in 2021, possibly 2022, but when the town first put the no parking signs on the south side of Camp Avenue, it was recommended they to do a four-way stop, and they did put the stop signs up on Lloyd. That has significantly decreased speeding and volume. I also remember the road was wider. And we did lose also, once they paved it, we lost about 1.5 feet by putting the curbs in. Our lawns just came down to the street, some of the Coolidge, Highland, Woodland, those streets, they don't have curbing in front of the residential areas. So we were the same way, but once they put the curbing in, that took almost 1.5 feet off the street too. I think they're about 8 inches wide. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to say. The volume, the wider. I believe that's it. I thank you guys for your service and thanks for listening to us.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
We do have one on Zoom. We're gonna go to them, but you can have a seat. You'll go after that person on Zoom. Mr. David Tatum, you are up, sir.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So thank you so much. First of all, I live at 29 Camp Avenue. I've been here for just under 25 years now with my family. 2 kids went through our great high school, especially the music program. Got to shout them out.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So, first, thanks, Rob, and your team, and the council, the previous town manager. I feel bad. You guys have spent way too much time on our small street, Camp Ave. So, my plea is no islands, no stalls, no carve-outs, no speed bumps or humps. One-way options. It's just not needed. Oh, it's a snowplow nightmare, a traffic nightmare. I appreciate the nostalgia for how the street might have been like 50 years ago, but I'm sorry, there's more cars, more delivery trucks, and everything else. If we really want safety, I think we should keep it as is with one side of the street parking. I'm very happy with that, and I think it's been way better than it was before, just one side of the street parking. And I want to also shout out the police department. When we first had one side of the street parking, I felt like it was just a suggestion. And now I feel like it's being enforced. I've personally gone and talked to them, and they seem to be addressing that. So I think it's great. I think it's much less safe having both sides of the street parking. We're not going to get sidewalks. It's just too much. Let's save the money, keep it as it is, one side parking, just do a basic milling and repaving. I just saw a fire truck and the EMS of my neighbors just recently, a couple days ago. And I remember thinking, I'm glad it's one side of the street parking because, with both sides of the street, who knows if they'd get there. So, thank you. My neighbor and I both need to get our driveways repaved. And we've been waiting on this for years. And I appreciate the council has been listening to us and listening to everybody, but let's just do the simple thing, get it done. Smaller streets equal slower speeds, and that's true. All right, I'll move on. Save the money, do that. I'll move on. Again, Rob, as far as transfer station and composting of food scraps, as a former member of the Environmental Quality Commission, I love that. It's a great idea. I'll bring my stuff to the transfer station. I go almost every week to see Johnny anyway, because who's going to say hi to Johnny, right?
That's well, Johnny.
Yeah. So, but I realize I go there all the time anyway, so I would definitely bring my stuff to the transfer station, and that doesn't apply to everybody, but it's a great idea. It's a potential savings, more sustainable. Why not? Give it a shot. Thank you all of you. I really appreciate what you're doing for us. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Right ahead.
Hello, Counselor. My name is Paul Knox. I live at 215 Camp Avenue. I consider myself the gateway to Camp Avenue, being the first house on the right from Willard Avenue. The talk on the street was always emergency vehicles couldn't get through. At 24 feet wide is where we are now. With a roughly 7 to 8 foot wide truck or car parked on the side of the street, I have 16 feet of travel down Camp Avenue. I think that's great. You want to widen to 26 to put 2 cars out there, which is about 16 feet of space you're taking up, leaves me about 10 feet. I just don't understand, if we're talking about safety, why we would go from 16 to 10. If you go to 28 and you have 2 cars, you're gonna end up going down to 12 feet. I just don't see the safety that we're talking about on that street. I don't think you're ever gonna slow people down. People are gonna drive the way they do. As some people mentioned on the council, they were surprised at the amount of speed that they had tested on that street was lower than they thought. So I guess I'll reiterate what the gentleman just said from 29 Camp. I would leave it the way it is instead of cutting into people's lawns. I'm not sure if the safety is really going to be that more safer with us parked on both sides of the street. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you too.
Thanks.
Hi. I'm John Latimer. I live at 57 Camp. I'll be brief. From my recollection, coming to several of these town council meetings, the issue arose after the South Street parking ban took effect. I've lived there for just about 8 years now. I've experienced no parking and parking on both sides. I loved parking on both sides. And my understanding is the reason that it was banned on the south side was primarily for emergency vehicle access. As far as speeding, can't remember your name, we've spoken on multiple occasions. He came by with his petition. And speeding never came up in our conversation. I don't care what street you go on in this town, any other town, there are people that are just going to speed. It's just human nature. When I'm cutting the front lawn, I have to be careful because there are people that, get points for taking out, people working on their yards. But again, it's my understanding that the only reason that was narrowed down was for emergency vehicle access. If we could have parking on both sides, restore it, that would be great. Obviously, I'd love to have it 28 feet wide. I don't see where that would increase speed. I just don't, because people are going to be parking on both sides at that point. And to a certain extent, you're creating a buffer zone with cars on both sides. So it's not like you're opening up the road to speed. It's a short street. So, there are some people that, want to see how fast they can go for a quarter mile or whatever. But other than that, I'd love to see 28 feet. But at bare minimum, I'd like to see parking restored to both sides, however it's accomplished. The cutouts, they don't seem to make a lot of sense to me, especially in the wintertime with snow removal. And again, contentions with neighbors like, hey, this is my cutout. How do you determine where the cutouts are gonna be? Right. So, thanks for listening, and again, enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Evening, everybody. Bill McCarthy, 206 Churchill Drive. Change gears altogether since I don't know anything about Camp Avenue. Except that.
Now you do.
Now I know lots about it. It sounds like it should be repaved. That's the simple answer. I want to, Mill Pond Park. They took the bridge out today, which is a step in the right direction. But we also have to take into consideration that there's a broader picture about what's going to go on with the Mill Pond Park. And that includes the committee that we have in place already on the Mill Pond. I'm asking or imploring the committee to ask the pool committee to reconvene and develop a schedule of meetings and give them a larger space to have their meetings so that we can actually have some public participation. The other meeting thing that I got is on the commissions, the TPZ and conservation commissions. I don't like the fact that you can't have any public participation unless it's not on the agenda. I talked with a couple of people about the legality of it and was told that it's for the best that you can't talk about things that are on the agenda. But to me, that it's like why I can go to the hearings, but the hearings are very focused. I like 220 Kitts Lane has been on in the conservation and TPZ now for well over a year, going well over a year. We'll just say that, and you can't even go in and talk about that because it's always on the agenda. So I think if we could, if the town council or the town manager have any input towards that process, to include, give the public a chance to talk about some of the things that are important to the public. Anything else? I guess that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Hello, Dana Havens, 113 Stoddard Avenue. I have to put on my fringe radical badge here because I'm bringing up the whole subject too. Several people are concerned. In one of the mailers that went out, there was mentioned that the Mill Pond pool has contaminated water and that it's contaminated. This part I don't think was in the flyer, but it was in discussions on Facebook. That was contaminated not just from goose poop, but from runoff from the chemicals used on the grounds of the park. So I would like to see you guys have Parks and Rec director come in and explain that that's not true. Or if it is true, like where do we go to get tested to see if our kids are suffering from this chemical exposure? And I also would like to see dates set for the pool committee, because it is an important subject. Something does have to be done, and we need to talk about both pools. And it's going to take a lot of time. I would love to finally see those other two options discussed that were not given to the committees until I found them. All right, and past committee never got it. New committee got it after I got them in the FOIs. It's time for that committee to start having meetings again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, same to you. Thanks.
I'm Janet Maycall. I live at 195 Camp Avenue. I have also lived there for 51 years. And I just want to reiterate very briefly that, and as a reminder, and perhaps for some of the newer members on the council, that a few months ago, we did take my husband and I and a couple of other neighbors went around and petitioned every house on our street. People who weren't home, we left things in their mailbox and they could return them to me. There were basically three major issues on that petition, mostly all regarding safety issues. And the majority of people on our street were in favor of restoring the width of Camp Avenue. And it was just strictly restoring the width to what it was originally. Basically, the issues were, it was basically safety issues. The emergency vehicles were having difficulty getting through a couple of times. We had a couple of times since we've been there, fire engines had to back up. We're at the closer end of Willard. They had to back up onto Willard Avenue and go around to Lloyd and come around to get back because there were cars they just couldn't get through. People indicated that they were concerned about having to walk in the middle of the street, even with one side of the street parking. When they were we have new young families there, they were out walking, trying to walk their children in carriages and things, and they'd have to go out around cars. And in doing that, they'd be in the line of traffic with the other cars coming. I know there was, you mentioned a couple of perhaps wondering where we prioritized different things. And we never had sidewalks, we never had cycling lanes. Those are not of interest to us, to our neighbors. We just, because of the number of cars that have increased over the years since we've been there, adult children are still living at their houses. Our houses are not huge, and we usually have their one car driveways. They're parking, they're trying to find parking places on the opposite side of the road or parking in their front yards. And that's just not a pleasant situation at all. So I just wanted to put it out there that if you haven't had a chance to look at the results of this survey, we handed in every person that answered copies of that. The results were put into the minutes at the time that we presented it. So please do so if you haven't had a chance to do that. And I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, nice tie.
Oh, thanks.
Reminds me of a nightmare I had last night. Said it reminds me of a nightmare I had last night.
State your name and address for the record first.
Absolutely. Bob Tallard, 32 Edmund Street, Newington. First of all, I want to do a public service announcement. A couple of years ago, we had a lot of break-ins at condos. If you remember, people weren't locking their cars. And I remember some of the quotes in the newspaper, whether it's a reminder or something, that they would leave their keys in the car was unlocked, laptop. It was around Christmas time. They had Christmas presents in the trunk. And I don't know, does anybody remember?
Yeah.
No response, no. But it was like 100 cars, they said. It was at a condo unit in Newington. So just as a public service announcement, I think people lock your cars, make sure they're locked. Don't leave anything of value in there whatsoever, especially a laptop on the front seat. You're just looking for trouble. I know that somebody went into my wife's car out of one night that she didn't lock her car, but there was nothing in there, but they sprawled out everything in the glove compartment, and it was all over the place. And she calls me out there, did you go through the car? And I says, I haven't been in your car. So just a reminder, I'd leave, if you have a locked glove compartment, I'd probably leave it open because they're just gonna break into it anyway, so it's just gonna damage your car. So anyway, couple of questions. I'd like to get a number of the latest amount of police officers we have on the force, if we can get an update on that. Also an update on what's going on with the pool situation. And they were talking about streets that, I live on Edmund Street. It's more like Connecticut Dragway. They should probably change the name of the street. Anybody remembers Connecticut Dragway? And I got the police. But, oh, happy Thanksgiving to everybody too. Mayor, Deputy Mayor,
Thank you. You too.
Town Manager. Hopefully, with traffic being as bad as it is, thanks to the carnage that Dominic Payne left us from the previous administration, that I know driving on the Berlin Turnpike is, I don't know, I think I'd rather be on the Titanic, be in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Probably be a better, have a better day in those two places. But anyway, that's what he left us, and you guys just helped him out. So, right? Just went along with what the boss said. So you just kiss the ring, right? Yeah. Roger Sherman, William Williams, Samuel Huntington, Lyman Hall, and Oliver Wolcott. You probably don't know those names. Those are the 5 signers of the Declaration of Independence. And they would probably, well, Lyman Hall, technically, he lived in Georgia. He was born in Connecticut. He went to Yale, but was living actually technically in Georgia at the time he voted, or he signed his name to the Constitution out of the 56 people that signed their name to the Constitution. So we have 5 from the state of Connecticut. And I just named them for you, in case anybody was wondering. I do a little reading. But anyway, and finally, with saying those names, and with the this year being so strange, I just have to question why 76 million brainwashed white supremacists would vote for Adolf Hitler. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room that would like to speak?
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. First of all, I would like to thank Chris and Rob for staying. Many times there's presentations to the council, MDC, town planner. They come, they give their presentations, and then they leave, and then I have to catch them out in the hallway or write them the next day to ask a question. So if this can be something going forward, even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes, I know it can get crazy, because I'm one of the crazies, as you can see from my fringe radical pendant here. In talking about Camp Avenue, I have been on Elton Drive for, let's see, I'm 79, so I've been there for 74 years, even 73, 78, whatever, a long time. And I've seen many generations come and go. And when I was 16 and my brother, well, I was 17, my brother was 16. We didn't have cars, but we eventually, a couple of years went by and my father gave in and let us get a car to share, but we couldn't park in the driveway. So he put in a half driveway for us. I don't know if that's an option for people on Camp Avenue or not. I've seen people come and go. I myself went back to my mom's house when I got divorced. My daughter was 10. And out of the 4 siblings that I have, or the 3 siblings that I have, 2 of them were living there. So there was 3 generations in the house. And that's what's happening now, I think. And that's why we're seeing more and more cars in the driveways. And it's for the speeding. The police were on our street. I had them put up a speed thing. And as soon as people see the speed sign, they slow down. So the 19 miles an hour, maybe that's an explanation. And the police did tell me when they did catch people that it was usually people in the neighborhood, because they were so familiar with the neighborhood, they just went speeding through. But in any case, let me get to the important things here. In speaking about Camp Avenue, money's being put aside, money's in CIP, money's in ARPA. I know that Janet's gonna come and there's going to be some switches towards the end of the year. If there's any possibility, in order to follow the money, because I followed many of the monies through CIP, but never had 2 fiscal years of money being taken out of CIP and put in ARPA. The monies were taken out of CIP with the intention that the ARPA funds would pay for it, and now the ARPA funds have to be spent. So now we're going to take and spend money on something else to put that money back into CIP so we don't lose it. I get the concept and I understand it. We don't want to lose the money, but I'd like to be able to follow the money. Handouts, I don't come that often. But if there could be a couple of packets, I don't know, some of the people from Camp Avenue maybe picked them up. I don't even know if they're at the table anymore. There was just the agenda when I got here. Not right now. It was easier for me to follow on those packets. But in any case, like I say, I was glad to see this presentation. I hope it doesn't take as long as it took for Alumni Road, 25 years in the making. I'm still waiting for the South Branch of the Park River. Millbrook, Piper Brook, I'm going to keep pushing for that. I really am, because I don't want to see it decertified as a flood control area. So with that being said, thank you for all you do. I know that there's been contentious times between many of us, including myself and others, regarding the pool and other issues. We've been called radicals, obstructionists, this, that, and the other thing. But I think all in all our hearts is what we are portraying for our opinions are what we think is best. What you think is best, what I think is best can be totally different, but we're all out for the best for the Newington residents. And I hope upon hope that that pool committee can come back together, because that, again, 10 years I've been watching this, or at least 4 with the pool committee. Let's get together, let's compromise, let's come up with something, because the town deserves it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Go NYU.
Amen. Anybody else in the room or over Zoom that would like to speak in public participation?
Yes.
Yeah, you can come on up. Yeah, come right up. You gotta state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, yeah. You can ask 2 questions or more.
I've been Camille LaJewitt, 57 Camp Avenue, and I hate the street the way it is with single side parking for various reasons, but I'm a person that wants to fix the wrong. And fixing the wrong in this case is to expand the road the way it was. And I understand the money involved in everything, but there was a wrong done 40 years ago for whatever reason. And of course, over the years, everyone loses sight of something if it's not put in their face constantly. So the street is an issue. As we've learned, the speeding is not a huge issue. There's always risk of that. There's always risk of injury. The bikes, I can count on 2 hands how many bikes I've seen on the street, true bikers. So a bike path is really ridiculous for us. And I agree with the mayor having that sort of rotary. I would be swearing every time I came to that thing. That's like punishing us once again. So if anything can be done, I mean, the way it is not good. I live on the side, I have a drain in front of my house. Maybe I'm only the second one, I'm not sure, on the street. But I would have you take all the street, the acreage you need from my house, I don't care, to widen the street. And I know everybody else would be affected. I feel that strongly about it, and do what you can. I know it's your decision, but my question then is, when do you think you're going to have a decision on this? We've really been waiting a long time. So that would be helpful. And if we have to have another meeting, do you think that it could be just with the Camp Avenue residents so that we can really get down and dirty, maybe like the last one? The last one was very helpful. I think most of us would appreciate something like that. And in ending, I would like to say, I can't say enough about Rob in the Highway Department, and I have called him several times for highway issues and just asked him what's going on here. And I also spoke with the town manager, who was very accommodating and listened to me and did answer my questions. So I appreciate everyone's time. So just keep us in mind. Don't forget about us. And please, let's get this some resolution. I appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else in the room like to speak in public participation? Or over Zoom? Seeing none, I don't believe we have any email correspondence. No email correspondence. All right, we will move along to remarks by councilors on public participation. Councilor Tiniakis.
All right, so a few things for those concerned about the pool committee. I've been in talks with the chairperson about setting up the meeting. I have my fingers crossed that they could work with the town clerk to find a date that's gonna fit before the new year. So we can get down and at least plan out our meetings for 2025. I love the idea of finding a new space for it. That room is small and it is not the most welcoming area to find in this building. So that's something that I'm definitely going to elevate up the chain. As far as the issues with Camp Avenue, I'd love to talk to some of you guys if you guys end up staying after the meeting. But from what you guys had went over about the safety issue, I'm just confused a little bit about your view on the safety issue, because we have proven data that narrowing the road would make it more safe. So I don't see how widening it is going to make the road safer in a sense. I understand your sentiment about having vehicles on both sides of the road, because if I'm driving and there's vehicles on both sides of the road, I'm not going to drive crazy. But that scenario only works if there are cars on both sides of the road fully packed. So, you know, if you have like a day where not everyone's parked there, then it's kind of open season. And then the sentiment about people having to walk in the middle of the road, I mean, the only thing that would alleviate that would be a sidewalk. Because if you have cars parked on both sides of the road, then you're walking on the grass, which they could do either way anyways. So, yeah, like I said, I'd love to talk to some of you guys if you're able to stick around after. I just have some kind of confusion from where you're coming from with all that.
Councilor Page?
Is it my next? Or?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Councilor Floyd.
I don't want to.
Sorry.
I can go, but I didn't want to step on it.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, man. Thank you, Mitch. First of all, just with regards to those folks that came out for Camp Avenue, thank you for being here. I know this is not the first meeting you've come out in full force to be a part of, so we appreciate that. Those that were online and in the room, it really makes a difference to listen to the concerns directly. And I think ultimately, as has been said a few times already, we have a pedestrian safety issue on a lot of streets in this town, including on Camp Avenue. That's folks, you know, having to walk essentially in the middle of the street, or in other areas, it's more speeding is the concern. But it's clear that there's pedestrian safety issues. We've known that for some time. And I think we need to encourage pedestrian safety where appropriate. And I think the way that we do that is by following some data-driven approaches to make that happen. So I was pleased that the data was provided to us this evening. And I know that there's been other data, including as a part of that petition that was first presented to the council some months back. And I think all of that needs to come together so that we can find a solution to this that works for these residents here. And also I just add as a part of that, and I know we clarified that this evening, but the emergency vehicles and their egress was a major concern. And I think we clarified tonight that in the conversations with our emergency departments, they do feel that they have enough egress to get up and down the street. But we do need to clarify that, because if some of our residents are in a position where they can't bet on an emergency situation going exactly as it needs to go for their safety and the safety of others in their neighborhood, just because they happen to live on a street that's a little bit narrower, that's not acceptable. So we need to clarify that with our emergency departments as well and make sure they have everything that they need. As far as the pool goes and the discussion about the committee, I'll just say, I think we've all said this here, the committee should meet ASAP. And I know Councilor Tiniakos has been working really hard to bring folks together to have those discussions and be productive members of those discussions and set a new committee meeting. But that needs to happen, because we still have pools in deplorable condition, regardless of what happened over the past months in this referendum process. We still have pools that need TLC, and they needed TLC 10 years ago, as we're all aware of. So that needs to happen, and there needs to be, as we've all, I think, committed to describing, a bipartisan, common sense collaborative process and solution that comes out of that. And that's only going to happen if the committee starts to meet. So thank you, Councilor Tiniakos, for your work to continue to make that happen. And I hope it happens ASAP, within as soon as possible. I mean, I don't know of any other way to say it. It needs to happen as soon as possible. Thank you.
Councilor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. I would agree with Councilor Plourde. I think the decision on Camp Ave is going to tick some people off and it's going to please some people. I think it needs to be data driven. I think it needs to be done in a fiscally responsible way, in a way that's safe. And there'll be a sweet spot there. I think that we'll come up with, and I think it should be done from what our experts are telling us. It can't afford to be done. Wait another season, another season, another season. I think the sooner the better. So I look forward to making a decision on this, or at least recommending a decision. The town staff makes the final decision, because like Councilman Mankey said, I don't know nothing about roads, but the experts do. I'm not an engineer at all, trust me. So that should be forthcoming quickly. The pool, I appreciate Ms. Haven's comments about the water and the testing. I agree with you that I think that we have an obligation to our kids, to our families, everyone who uses the pool. It is a concern, whether it's runoff or whether it's from goose poop or from chemicals or from the pond water that gets in there. And agree with Councilor Plourde. They're long overdue, and those problems, from what the experts and architects and engineers have said, will only continue. So we'll continue to patch things up. I guess we'll bubble gum until we can come up with a decision that fixes these once and for all, at least for the next generation. I wanted to respond to Bill's comments about participation in planning and zoning, or in TPZ and conservation. I don't know enough. I'm sure either the town manager, the town clerk, or others who are experts in this, the extent to which the limits on public participation are statutory or otherwise. And I don't know that those are flexible or can be changed, but as someone who loves participation and debating stuff, I would love to see that happen, but we may have our hands tied if we're precluded from doing that for some reason. So, but I think that bears looking into. And I think that's all I got. I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for being here and staying so late tonight and taking out of time of your lives to do this for us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm going to reiterate what folks have been said and thank everyone for coming out tonight and speaking. I know it's been a long process, and I know that, we met back in June, and I know that there's a desire to get things done. So I mean, I think in fairness, to the question about when do you think we will have a decision, I think we want to make sure we carefully consider everything. But I mean, to the point of, these guys want to get the work started and have their planning done. I don't think I would want to have anything not decided by springtime, probably before that, ideally. I mean, it's at whatever timeline works for you guys, but I think if we could have a decision sooner rather than later, with the springtime being the absolute end of it, that would be my goal. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming out, and happy Thanksgiving. All right, moving right along to old business. First item is Board of Education CIP Memorandum of Understanding. We have Lou with us and Dr. Brumman. Hi, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for staying with us. Any questions or comments or anything that we can introduce on this?
Lou, you want to mention the changes that you and Dr. Brumman made, or Dr.
Sure.
Brumman?
Good evening, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And the changes are modest in scope. There's only a couple of statements added and modified in the document. I tried to leave everything as similar to the prior version as possible. It is all based on the foundation of the 48-16 section of the current charter. So the three superseding statements that are here are that the fund balance will not exceed 2 million at fiscal year end. All funds in excess of 2 million shall be transferred to the Board of Ed operating budget, which essentially facilitates a potential transfer over to the non-lapsing fund, depending on how much money there is that we're talking about. And that, the review is really done June 30th, so that all of these are synchronized properly in coming into the fiscal year end closing. So it does add back the statement for until reauthorized by the town council or until September 1st, 2025, which is when this MOU would lapse, and without any superseding action by the town council, the condition of the ordinance would return to what is currently in place. So that is the long and the short of it.
Thank you very much. So, Councilor Draco, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Brummett and Lou, for making the change to have it, reviewed every year by the council on September 1st. I just have a question on item number 3, and it's probably just the wording that is throwing me, but it says the BOE CIP shall be only reviewed at June 30th each year to determine if the fund balance is over the cap. They just sound like, no matter what day, June 30th sounds like Saturday, Sunday, whatever, that's the only day you can review it. I mean, what's the intent? What's the intent of that? Is it has to be reviewed by June 30th, or?
Well, that it's synchronized with the year-end closing. You have the other statements, the fiscal year end. Maybe it's better stated if as shall only be reviewed at fiscal year end each year to determine if the fund is in balance, or if the fund balance is over the cap. So that
Maybe that makes it just a little clearer.
yeah, that's fine if that's the preference of the council.
Sure. Let's go with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Mankey, go ahead.
Just to follow up with this, so if on June 15th, your fund, the CIP had a fund balance of $2.5 million. And for some reason you spent $500,000 between then and June 30th, you'd still be under the cap then, right?
Correct. Right, but if there's alternate dates that evaluation is being done, you won't really have reach the conclusion of the fiscal year-end activities.
But the board would look at what you spend anyway, right? So, I mean, obviously you wouldn't spend $500,000 off the board knowing about it, obviously, so, yeah.
Correct.
So there'd be checks and balances, yeah, I guess that's okay.
Yep.
So the board would know what's being, yeah, okay.
Correct.
Councilor? Any other comments or questions from councilors? Do we need to read this, or do we just make a motion? to accept it?
I realize I didn't include the resolution here in the packet.
Okay.
If I can make the little change that Councilor Draco mentioned, and then, I'm sorry, Dr. Brahma and Lou, I think I neglected to include the resolution.
Well, we can vote on it. Someone can
Just make a motion
yeah,
to, okay.
To accept.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, we can figure that out.
Between nine of us, so much for
We can do this.
All right.
We got this.
I would entertain a motion to approve the MOU with the amended language as discussed.
Regarding fiscal year end.
Or regarding fiscal year end.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Floyd, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rada. Any discussion on this? Any further discussion?
I think you did pretty well.
Yeah, very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Take care, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, moving right along. Next, we have the police department HVAC and roof replacement funding. Did anybody have any additional questions about that? Comments or questions? Councilor Floyd, would you read the resolution?
Sure, certainly. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby allocates the use of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, in the amount of $225,000 for the police department HVAC and roof replacement project per bid number 2024-2025-1.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Floyd, seconded by Councilor Tenniakis. And Councilor Mankey.
Just, is this the total funds or is this including what's already budgeted for in CIP? Yeah, yes, I knew you. I didn't want you to come all the way down here.
Yeah.
And then, So you like the wasted evening?
So this is added to what's already been budgeted for the project.
And so already this budget is how much?
I didn't hear you.
How much is already budgeted?
So for the specific for the police HVAC project, there was $235,000 currently in the budget. Then we were using funding from 4 other sources in conjunction with the new allocation from ARPA funds to complete the project.
So total project is how much?
So the apparent low bidder, the base bid came in at $995,500. And there's 3 alternates. So with the ARPA funding that I've requested gives us a total budget of $1,165,000. So depending on the alternate selections, if we choose to use them, we will use all the funding. Does that make sense or answer your question? I don't know if I did a good job.
Maybe, here's another way. There was originally 775,000 across all funds budgeted for this purpose.
For this project.
So therefore, we need that the $225,000 extra to get us to the finish line. That a fair statement?
And the other, the 750,000 was already budgeted previously.
Correct, yeah.
And when can we, the work starts immediately or?
So I have a scope review scheduled for next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
And then we will get our contract language in order, sign the contract, and it'll start in the spring.
Okay, so it's weather dependent. We obviously.
We're gonna start the project in the swing season, so it's not too hot, not too cold. We have provisions in the contract for temporary air conditioning needs if the police department, if the project goes into warmer days.
Councilor Gonzalez?
I just had a quick question. When you said the lowest bid, it just made me think, do we always go with the lowest bid or
We
do
go with
more
the-
than one? Like, how do you do that?
We go with
Just
the
quickly?
lowest responsible bid.
Okay, so if there's like, okay, I got you.
So it's a public bid. We review all bids received and the lowest responsible bidder is who we select.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. Just so we're clear and for the public to understand, this is the entire roof of the police building and the HVAC?
No, it's not the entire roof. So the major roof replacement is of the original flat roof of the building when it was constructed.
Yep.
There was 2 alternates, one alternate being a smaller lower roof, and the second is smaller upper roof where the buildings were separated. They redid part of that roof when they separated the buildings. So they're alternates because they weren't done that long ago. It's more of an aesthetic purposes that we included those pricing. It's not something that I'm looking to necessarily take on at this point. I think the roof is in fine condition. And then there's architectural shingles. There's the pitched areas that give you the a lower of a pitched roof. So that is also original. That's also being replaced.
And these, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are not necessarily at their warranty max, if that's what we call it, but because we're doing HVAC, it doesn't make sense, as you said prior, to put a new, very expensive HVAC system on a roof that's nearing its completion or its lifetime. And then have to
correct,
like suffer a bad roof or redo it.
We are coming up on the 20-year mark. That has an NDL, I believe, of 25 years, that flat roof, which is a no dollar replacement or no dollar warranty of 25 years. So we're right there. Yes, so I don't want to remove all these rooftop units, put in new curbing, and then have to go back in 5 years and replace the roof, and then all that has to be redone.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Menke?
Just again, do we have a solar up there?
We do not.
No, we don't. Can we do that after we get this done or? is
That
not
roof's a
enough
little
room?
bit trickier to do solar. I think that's why it wasn't proposed
Not
originally.
enough room up there, is there?
There really isn't, not on the
Yeah,
flat portions. So no, that's not part of this project. There are some conversations starting about solar for an alternative solar plant for the police department, but that's to be determined.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of room there.
Any other discussion on it? All right, we had a motion by Councilor Floyd, it was seconded by Councilor Finiakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
hanging out with us,
Thanks,
Joe.
Joe.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thanks.
Same to you as well.
Thank you.
Concludes our old business and we go on to item 8, resignations and appointments. Counselor Page, would you read the first resignation?
Sure, Mayor, thanks. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby accepts the resignation of Joanne McCormick as a member of the Conservation Commission in accordance with correspondence received on November 14, 2024, and effective immediately.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Page, seconded by Counselor Mankey. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Deputy Mayor Rada, would you read the next resolution?
Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby accepts the resignation of Liza Andrews as a member of the Human Rights Commission in accordance with correspondence received on November 22nd, 2024, and effective immediately.
Second.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Rada, seconded by Counselor Gonzalez. Any discussion on this? None. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Resignations out of the way. We will move on to appointments. Counselor Page, you want to do these?
Sure, Mayor, thanks. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby makes the following appointments: Conservation Inland Wetlands Commission, Keith Anderson, member, 50 Theodore Street, Party D, immediate term to 11/30/25, replacing Joanne McCormick, and Gregory R. Ostrinsky, alternate at 267 Audubon Avenue, Party D. Term is immediate to 11/30/2027, replaces alternate vacancy. Also, Human Rights Commission, Katie Rodriguez, member, 58 Sunset Road, Party D, term is 12/1/24 to 11/30/27, and replaces vacancy resignation of Liza Andrews.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Page, seconded by Counselor Mankey. Any discussion on these appointments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. On to 3 minutes. I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes for October 8th, 2024, October 22nd, 2024, and November 12th, 2024 regular.
So moved.
meetings. All right. Motion by Counselor Mankey,
Second.
seconded by Deputy Mayor Rada. Any discussion?
Yes. Sorry.
Counselor Nagel.
It's just a minor thing.
Okay.
The November 12th regular meeting minutes. On page 16, my liaison report with the library. I can see why the recorder might have made the error that she did. The library concert is on the 7th of March. And it's music appropriate for St. Patrick's Day, which is on the 17th of March. Just that one little thing to clarify. So the concert's on the 7th. St. Patrick's Day is on the 17th.
Counselor Mankey, are you okay amending your motion to include those changes?
Sure.
Very good. Deputy Mayor Rada, are you okay with those changes?
I am.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to new business. First item up is America 250 local contact. This is fun. Want to give us a little background on this, Jonathan?
Sure. 2026 represents the semi-quincentennial of our nation's founding, the 250th birthday. Actually, in my last job, one of the last things I did there was to get a local contact in Pennsylvania. So this is the same thing. Basically, all the state commissions, there's a federal commission that, authorized state commissions, and all the state commissions are reaching out to municipalities, whether it's historical societies or park and rec departments, to try to coordinate programming to, with a sort of a patriotic / historical bend. And so in order to facilitate sort of programming that honors our nation's 250th birthday, the state commission has asked for a local contact in Newington who can kind of serve as a liaison for those activities. So I defer to council on who should be appropriate for that role.
Question about that. So if we hear from folks that are interested, do we refer them to you? Or is there like an interview? Is it you make the decision or is it the council? How do
No,
we-
I mean, frankly, it's sort of open-ended. I don't think that there's any requirement that it be council as opposed to me. Obviously my first thought was someone on staff, but I don't know that that's necessary. It could be a member of the public. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go about this.
Could we have, do you think we could have multiple contacts? I'm just thinking if there's people that are interested.
I think we should form a hate committee.
Say that into the microphone, please. Clearly and loudly.
Holy cow.
Why don't we have a group of people that? Hey, I mean, this is, we don't get to be 250 years old very often, so let's get a group of people together and, if they're interested in doing it, like we did for 150th, it shouldn't be a council decision, it shouldn't be a council thing, it should just be a group of people that plan something.
Sure. That's reasonable.
I mean, unfortunately, Newington wasn't around here when we fought.
I mean, Newington was here.
The land was here, but we were
people
part of it.
here, but. No, that makes sense. Councilor
I
Floyd?
was just gonna say to Councilor Mackey's point, I think that's great. I think the commission is wonderful, or committee, or whatever it might be. I don't know if this is somewhat time sensitive, obviously it's coming up, so I don't know if they would need that contact from us before the time that it would take for us to compile a formal committee of some kind to do this work. Jonathan?
Yeah, I might suggest in the interest of simplicity, you name one person and then you have that person convene a group,
Yeah,
like a sort of a working group.
That makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great.
Councilor Pacheco?
Oh, maybe I missed it in the attached minutes, but maybe Jonathan, you can tell me. I would imagine if somebody who wants to volunteer for this or get involved, personally, I would like to know how much time commitment it's gonna be, what my responsibilities are gonna be, whatever. It doesn't seem to be a lot here in terms of what's
1 hour a
expected
week.
of the
Yeah,
person.
it could be, it could be anything, it could be a lot or it could be a little, depending on what they want to do.
Well, no, this is talking about the liaison to the state. We're not talking about the commission. So I think the liaison to the state needs to know what their expectations are.
I can certainly reach out but I do think I'm guessing it's probably one of those things, it's as much or little as you make it out to be. I imagine it'd be a meeting or two
Right.
that
But just if there's a little bit more structure, a bit more information so that somebody who's applying for it will know what they're.
sure, I can reach out,
Okay, thank
reach
you.
out and provide more. Yep.
This is exciting and I can think of a few people that would be probably interested in doing this for sure.
I'm impressed the town manager was able to say that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been practicing in front of the mirror for the last 2 weeks.
But try to spell it.
Yeah, no way. All right, very good. All right, moving along. Next item is 2025 town council meeting schedules. We are at the end of the year almost. It is that time for us to consider these dates for next year's meeting schedule.
Yeah, and I mean, it follows the normal second and fourth Tuesday convention with the one exception is or two exceptions, the second meeting in September would fall on the fourth Tuesday in September would fall on Rosh Hashanah. And then the fourth Tuesday in December would be 2 days before Christmas. So I propose not scheduling for those days and having special meetings as necessary.
Switch on this, we'll review it, and take a look next time.
Sounds good.
All right, very good. Moving right along now. Next on the agenda is written oral communications from town manager. Anything to update it on?
Yeah, a few things to bring to your attention. First, this is in response to a point that Councilor Floyd raised maybe 2 meetings ago about the police community council, I believe it used to be called. There was this act that was passed earlier this year that requires municipalities to convene police community roundtables. It doesn't require any council action, but it requires, it's sort of like the old police community council, but we're now also required to invite representative of the judicial branch, a prosecutor, representative of a gun safety group, and I believe a social services nonprofits as well. The chief, spoken with the chief about a couple of times, he basically understands the assignment, his plan. He's reaching out to those people who would serve in that role, as well as the people who have participated on the police community council in the past. And his plan is to do quarterly meetings starting in 2025. So obviously those will be public meetings. We'll advertise them, make notice about them, but the council doesn't need to do anything to authorize them. And I suspect you'll see something as we get into the new year.
And those are called roundtables? now?
Yeah, police community roundtable, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Same meeting you change.
As I think one of the members of the public mentioned, the Mill Pond Park Bridge is going to be installed very soon. So, you know, you can see some.
Gone when I drove by today.
Yeah, yeah. The silo project that we were talking about maybe 2 weeks ago, that has now completed. They're completely demoed, so you wouldn't notice that they had been there if you drove by today. The EDC, the Economic Development Commission, has started a local passport competition where if you go to the town website, EDC website, you can print out a passport, and you can, if you go to a certain number, visit a certain number of participating businesses in town, you're eligible to win prizes. So I encourage members of the public to look into that and participate. At the next meeting on December 10th, there will be Park and Rec Awards for Building a Strong Community Awards, I guess an annual awards that Bill does, so that'll be fun. And last thing to point out is we are finalizing a draft lease with the Indian Hills Country Club. And I sent over a draft to them, to my counterpart there at the end of last week. So hopefully they'll have a 30-year lease pretty soon that will allow them to get the kind of financing and support they need to continue to operate. That's all I have.
Councilor Draco?
Just a correction, not a correction, but an addition for the EDC passport program. You can also go to any of the participating businesses and pick up the passport there. I was at King Donut this past, and they actually, here, take it. So you can either print it off or go to one of the participating businesses and pick up your passport.
Councilor Floyd?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, in addition to that, it's 6 businesses for folks that are interested. Go around and take a look at that, which is wonderful. One question I had was just with regards to the town center master plan process. I know the steering committee's met. I don't know if you could share a bit of an update.
Yeah, quick update. So we had a stakeholder sort of kickoff meeting last week. I thought was really generated some good discussion. A number of members of business owners or people either active in the chamber had some really good ideas. As the next step at the Festival of Lights, there's going to be a booth with Colliers there. Kimberly from Colliers will be there to sort of solicit more input, similar to what happened at the Waterfall Festival a couple months ago. And then on Monday, the 9th, I think, December 9th, I think it's from 10 to 11 or starting at 10. She'll be setting up at the senior center as well to get input from our senior population. So that's where things stand. There's going to be periodic meetings and updates as we go, but off to a good start, I think.
Thank you.
Just one question about that. I know recently, I think we all got it. There was a nice letter from a resident expressing their concerns and their hopes for the town center relative to green space and senior housing and other things. I responded and gave that individual the newingtontown.com or website. So .com, I invited that person to send their comments there, but then I said I would forward them as well. Is there any protocol for that, or should we just assume that if folks are, my point is, if they're emailing us, to make sure we're forwarding that?
Yeah, I would send it to me and Paul. Me and Paul and Kimberly probably is, yeah.
All right, thank you. And thanks, everyone. I encourage everyone to bring those comments to us or to the consultants.
And I'd also add too, there's that, as Councilor Page pointed out, there's that separate website. And I believe there's a comment, you can provide comments directly to Colliers through that website, and Paul Dixon gets CC'd on those as well.
Nice.
Questions or comments? All right. Moving along, council liaison committee reports. Any updates? Councilor Nagel.
Yes, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the senior center had to delay their meeting for a variety of reasons. So they did meet on the 14th, I believe. At that meeting, they discussed updates about the AARP funds and monies that were projected, and one of their projects was to replace recumbent equipment, and that has come in. Monies also from bequest from Patty Foley have been found and have been put forth and are going to be used to have that equipment put in. They talked about additional problems or lack of them involving the congregant lunch funding, which is ongoing. They had a senior expo, which netted $5,000 to the good for the senior center. There were 51 vendors there. Senior Center hosted, as we all know, the Veterans Day ceremony and coffee hour before it. They're in the process of filling a part-time position that's been vacant for a while. It doesn't require any additional monies. The town is replacing a generator which was damaged during, I believe, the roof replacement or whatever, and that's ongoing. As well as looking at solar panels on the roof. Also, the senior center has an agreement with the Art League to set up residence. As a result, it was thought by Jamie that indeed a outdoor storage facility, additional one, purchased from the funds that the senior center has given to be put out there to help to put some of their supplies there. And it was approved to help to make it a little more amenable for the Art League as well as the senior center in terms of placing equipment and whatever, and not making it difficult within spaces that already exist. I believe Councilor Tanikos was on Zoom, and I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, you got all of it.
Okay, I want to give you credit for being there. Let's see what else. Just to let you know, as Deputy Mayor Rada is well aware of, the building committees are ongoing. So the Anna Reynolds hasn't wrapped up yet, but they're in the process, and the John Wallace is moving right along quickly to have plans, so that project moves expediently. There have been ribbon cuttings, even though it's not a liaison in the area. It's nice to see new businesses and places opening up that we can go and show our appreciation for their being there. And I assume the mayor is going to talk about Stu Leonard's later on, so I'll leave that for him to talk about at the end.
Councilor Floyd?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, again, the Economic Development Commission met, and they are very excited about this passport program, which is kicking off strong. We've got a handful of businesses participating, and a lot of the businesses that I went to and dropped off passports to were very excited just to see some investment from the town in their success. And for many of them, it was the first time that they had seen anybody from the town, whether it was a commission or a council or anything, come into their business and recognize their contributions to town. So I think that's a lesson for all of us, that events like this are not just, good, because they're feel good, but they actually make a difference for a lot of these businesses who, sometimes feel like they don't have the support in our town. So that was really great to see, and encourage folks to participate in that. The Permanent Municipal Building Commission Ordinance Review Subcommittee also met. That never gets old. And we continued our discussions. We had a very productive discussion about I think, first half of our now fourth draft. We've gone through 4 drafts of the ordinance with different changes. We've gone in different directions, but each of them have built on significant success, and we started to parse out some of the thornier issues at our last meeting, and we did it in a respectful and terrific way. So those were good discussions. We're trying to move that very quickly, but as you can imagine, things take some time, and folks get sick, or you have vacations, as has happened a couple of times, and we can't quite meet as fast as we may have liked, but we are moving very quickly, and that discussion is still very much ongoing and very productive. And the last thing I'll mention, just on a personal note, I attended the State Historic Preservation Office's public officials meeting for the development of their statewide historic preservation plan for 2024 through 2029. And that was a great discussion and was attended by dozens upon dozens of public officials and staff members in various towns throughout the state of Connecticut to talk about different funding opportunities available through the State Historic Preservation Office for historic preservation, particularly as we come to the semi-quincentennial, I think that was right. And also to provide some feedback on some of their top line goals for the 2024-2029 plan. Those goals, I'll just read them very briefly for folks' edification, are quality of life, education, collaboration, technology and data, or just the documenting digitally of historic records, and sustainability and resilience of our historic properties and historic sites. So provided a lot of feedback on what, from our perspective here in town in the short time I've been able to work on some of this, what we'd like to see more of from the state and from the State Historic Preservation Office in terms of historic preservation support, and looking forward to contributing to those discussions moving forward. That's it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Tiniakis.
Dave, forgive me if you said this and I just missed it, but just remembered the senior center actually got their specific ARPA funding recently. That's designated just for them. So a little later than what they were expecting, but now they have like a month and a half to figure out what to do with it. But that is something that they got recently. As far as Parks and Rec stuff, the Water Lantern Festival agreement has been made, so that will be coming back to Newington next year, May 3rd. So that's great. They're in negotiations right now with the vendor who provides the rides and services for the extravaganza. So they're trying to get some updated rides and something new to the extravaganza than what we've recently had. As far as Seymour and Beechwood Park, if those who live around there have noticed that there's been a lot of work being done on there. Ideally, the parks are going to be done by spring 2025, but they're hoping that they might be able to get them done before the new year because the weather has been really great for them. So that's touch and go. And as our town manager has said, Night of Lights next Friday. So hopefully all of us are there enjoying all the fun free stuff.
Singing voices ready.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then a quick plug for our EMS department, who is always looking for people to either volunteer or join their team. So if anyone listening or anyone here has a family member interested or anyone that they know, they're always welcoming new people.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bedrego.
Just a quick update for the Conservation and Wetlands Commission. The public hearing for the Kits Lane development has been extended for one more meeting, and the final public hearing will be December 17th. It was not held this past the past meeting because the environmental consultant wasn't able to provide his final report to the commission until like 3 o'clock before the meeting at 7 o'clock. So they did not have time for a full review. But if anybody is interested, again, in the Kits Lane development, the final public hearing will be December 17th.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gonzalez.
Really quick, the Youth Adult Council was not able to meet. We did not have a forum. I believe we
Appointments are out.
had some appointments made, and we'll be having a special meeting to get that together. And the Human Rights Commission met. They will be voting on their the people in charge in January and deciding what their event for the year should be. So if anyone has any thoughts on what that should be, just reach out and we'll be happy to entertain it.
Counselor Menke.
Not a committee report, but just a shout out to Human Services who provided sustenance for the Thanksgiving holiday this week to many of our families in town who wouldn't have a Thanksgiving otherwise. It's an amazing undertaking that Carol and her staff undertake to get turkeys and chickens and potatoes and gravy and stuffing to many of us, our neighbors and friends who wouldn't be able to have a holiday without that. So just a shout out to her and her staff and all those volunteers who help get the food into people's trunks, or get it into their houses, or collect it, or people who donate the food. It's an amazing undertaking, and every year it happens flawlessly. This year it happened on the only day in the last 6 months that it rained.
I was gonna say that.
So if you ever needed to break a drought, just have Carol and her staff plan a turkey giveaway. Because it broke the drought, but it is a major undertaking, and I think sometimes we take that for granted that it happens, and it just happens, but it takes a lot of man hours and a lot of planning. And I'm always impressed at how well her staff makes it happen. It seems like it's easy, and it seems like it just all goes smoothly, but I bet you she's glad it's over, and she's probably gearing up for the next major
Christmas.
the next major event, which is probably coming up in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Tiniakis?
Yeah, Councilor Mackey reminded me, Thursday, there's the turkey drop, Eagle Park.
Yes,
So, anyone listening or anyone, I'll be there. I think donations are recommended, $20 a person, $40 a family. Super fun, bring canned goods, I believe, too. They all get donated to people in need. Yeah, it's a good time. It's fun.
As Councilor Nagel alluded to, myself and Councilor Nagel were at Stu Leonard's last Thursday with members of the Newington Police Department in Newington and members of the Newington Fire Department, as well as the fire commissioners, to be part of Stu Leonard's annual Turkey Brigade. Stu Leonard's is an amazing partner in our community, but they're an amazing company and a base business. And every year they give away thousands and thousands of turkeys to organizations and people in need. And we got an assembly line set up, and we probably handed out 500-600 turkeys in 10 minutes. So we got them moving, and it's a great experience. And it was the first rainy day in about 6 months that we had to go into, but it's really a good time, and it's a great opportunity to be able to get back. And we have a great organization in town that does that. So it was a good time. Thank you. All right, moving along to public participation. Anyone in the room or over Zoom that would like to speak in public participation, come on up.
It's up to you.
It's up to you.
All comes down to you.
Seeing none, we'll move on then. Keep to remarks by councilors. Councilor Gonzalez.
I just want to wish our Newington football team a good luck tomorrow. I think they are undefeated at the moment, and even though I grew up in Wethersfield, go Newington, yes. Go Newington, I know a lot of those boys, my son played football with them for many years, and I wish them the best.
To your point, I have a bet with the mayor of Wethersfield for a cup of coffee at one of our locations.
I thought it was a dunk tank, we got to put one of you
No,
guys.
no. We never agreed to those.
I heard that.
No, cup of coffee. That's it. Although I'm not worried about it. Mayor Wethersfield should be worried. I think our team is stacked this year. Councilor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to express in this Thanksgiving time our gratitude for our town manager. You've come on board and you've done, I think, an amazing job. I think we all would agree.
Yes.
And you're working real hard and real smart and moving us forward. And through you to your staff, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate it. Councilor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. Likewise, I wanted to thank you, Jonathan, for all the work that you've done in a very short period of time to help us be on track to meet a lot of really important goals. And thank you to all of our staff, in particular to our emergency staff in the fire department, in the police department, who many of whom in EMS, et cetera, that maybe don't get to spend a lot of time with their families week to week, day to day, and are going to get the chance to do so hopefully this evening, this Thursday, when they spend some time with their families for Thanksgiving. So shout out to them for all that they do. Thank you for that.
Councilor Mankin.
As well as congratulating everybody, I'd like to congratulate you all for surviving a whole year. Congratulations. And happy Thanksgiving to us all. I think we've done well this year, and we've put in a solid year of work, and I think we deserve a day of eating turkey. And I hate pumpkin pie, but pumpkin pie and watching football, I hate pumpkin pie. You like pumpkin pie? How many people like pumpkin pie?
Really?
I'll vote for that.
Apple pie any day.
Apple pie is good too. Yeah.
But not-
apple pie's good.
The cheddar cheese or ice?
Cheddar cheese,
Yeah. there you
Vermont
go.
cheddar cheese.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, apple pie and cheddar.
You don't ever eat
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, happy Thanksgiving to you all, and I appreciate working with you this year, and
Likewise.
look forward to
Likewise.
next year.
Amen.
Deputy
And I
Mayor.
thought I liked my tie, I don't know.
That's right. We've all should have said that.
It's in my dreams.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just reiterate what's been said. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and to the staff. We've extended to the staff here. Excuse me. And also, happy Thanksgiving and a thanks to Susan and Scott, who sit there very quietly. Without you, we couldn't do any of this. So thank you both.
Make us
Just
look beautiful.
plugging along and answering questions and getting those minutes out. So thank you so much.
Councilor Draco.
I'll jump on the bandwagon too, but more just, I guess more of a reflection, you know, over the past year, we've been spared from some severe weather, that has hit the rest of the country. We've been spared from, you know, conflict in our streets. We've been, we all have a roof over our heads. We all got out of bed this morning. Thanksgiving is like, it actually is one of my favorite holidays because it really is to reflect on, no matter how, we have a lot. Even though there are times where we think we don't, all you have to do is look to your left or you look to your right and you realize that we should be grateful for everything we have. So again, it's my favorite holiday. I hope that we all, in our own way, give thanks to whatever or what we believe in. And just realize we are very fortunate and very lucky, and consider those who might need a little bit of help.
Man,
That's beautiful.
I will jump on the bandwagon too, and actually want to, if you'll indulge me, yesterday, you know, I don't know if anyone noticed yesterday on social media, but there was a car fire in the morning, and, you know, when it pops up on social media, it says, you know, car fire, you know, vehicles in attendance, and then, you know, several minutes later, you get an update, fire out, right? Well, I was awoken by this. I happened to, you know, hear about 7:45 yesterday, I've heard a very suspicious boom, followed by a second, even more alarming boom, which drew me to my window where I saw a large plume of smoke and flames shooting into the air. And, you know, immediately jumped up and ran downstairs and grabbed my phone to call it in. And by the time I got downstairs, there was already a truck pulling up on my street. There was someone's work truck had caught fire and some equipment in there was exploding, and they had their car parked right in their driveway, right next to their garage, right next to the house. And without the speed of our fire department getting there, that the house probably would have been lost. And it's the fact that they got there so quickly and were able to do this and get it done, you know, most assuredly save the house. And it was, you know, amazing to get to witness our guys in action and to see how great they are. But, you know, at this time of year, you know, particularly, you know, as we consider and as we're thinking about, you know, what we're thankful for, you know, I'm very thankful for our first responders for being out there when it's toughest to keep us safe. And we have the best here between our fire department, our EMS, and our police department. You know, we are really blessed to have an amazing group of people keeping us safe, and I'm really thankful for them this year. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone in Newington and all the fine folks.
We have a new four-legged officer.
Oh, yeah, we do. We have a new four-legged officer. Everyone should come and check out. Definitely. But yeah, so happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
same to you.
Too.
Moving along to informational items. I don't think we have anything we cover. Night of Lights.
Lights.
December 6th.
December 6th. Yep. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Counselor Menke.
Second.
Second by Counselor Floyd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, motion carries unanimous. We are adjourned, 9:50 PM.